Chapter 1568. Tenzuka Gong glared at Dustless. His smiling face was asking for a beating. La Freya and Hane's cannon purposely went along with Dustless and leaned into his arms. The two goddesses were as lazy as kittens with a satisfied smile on their faces. Damned bastard. What do you take the battle with me for? Be serious. Tenzuka Gong was shocked and angry. He was being looked down upon. This guy even used him as a tool to pick up girls. You want me to be serious? With an idiot like you? Dustless did not put Amaterasu Gong in his eyes at all. His words were as unpleasant as they could be. He did not treat Amaterasu Gong as a person at all. Of course, he wasn't a human to begin with. In the end, he was just an artificial life form similar to Asteroidi. The one who created him was the so-called sage. You're courting death. After being humiliated again and again, Tenzuka Gong could not bear it anymore. He waved his hand, and countless cold steel lights were as numerous as a rainstorm. Ignoring the definition of distance, they directly shot in front of Dustless in an instant. You're always using this kind of trash move. Wu Chun shook his head. His face was full of disappointment. At the same time, the dormant chakra in his body broke out. The deep Rinnegan rippled, and a visible ripple broke out. Shinra Tensei. Bang, bang, bang. All kinds of spikes were repelled by the repulsive force. Dustless, La Freya, and Kanace Cannon, who were under his protection, were unharmed. What kind of ability does this guy have? All kinds of moves, too many to count. Tenzuka Gong was depressed. He couldn't even get close to Dustless now. But my target isn't this kid. Laughing sinisterly, Tenzuka Gong's gaze finally landed on Kanace, Natsuan, and La Freya. His oily green eyes were filled with playfulness, and his lips would occasionally move slightly, letting out the excited laughter of a hunter who had encountered his prey. Since you want to die so much, Dustless's eyes shot out a dazzling sharp light. His entire body turned into a flash of light and disappeared in an instant. The speed of light could not be captured, and no creature would be able to capture it. What is this? Light? Even an alchemist like Gong Tenzuka was stunned on the spot. What he saw in his eyes was a flash of super light, but he didn't know what it was. I have to retreat. This guy is too dangerous. I might even lose my life. In a brief trance, Amatsuka Gong vaguely saw Dustless's ferocious face. His whole body was cold and desperate. His dead eyes were emotionless, just like a machine. At the same time, the Tenzuka Gong felt a cold, baleful aura lock onto him. He instinctively wanted to escape, but he was shocked to find that his body was not listening to him at all. He could not move his legs at all. Damn it! Tianzhong Gong cursed loudly. He was sweating profusely. He knew that it was caused by Wu Chen's murderous aura. At the same time, the owner of the flash arrived. He glanced at Tianzhong Gong's ugly face and kicked him mercilessly. Light speed kick. The flash of light hit Gong Tenzuka's body with full force. His body emitted violent fluctuations. His face was hit by a powerful force and exploded into a pool of unknown liquid. Then, a huge mushroom cloud rose into the sky. Hot air and shock waves burned everything. The buildings on both sides of the street collapsed and disappeared completely. Fragile objects such as glass were all turned into dense, sparkling fragments. Gong Tenzuka himself was even more miserable. He was sent flying dozens of meters away by Dustless's kick. He bounced on the ground like a football. His body and appearance no longer existed. His face was destroyed by Dustless's kick. Now, he had turned into a pile of liquid metal. Such strength! Could it be that the fifth true ancestor has appeared in this world? Tianzhong Gong turned into flowing liquid metal. The terror of Dustless rose to an unprecedented level. This guy was so ferocious that he didn't seem like a human. I hate people who like to take hostages the most. When I meet this kind of despicable person, I will always reveal my strength to beat him or her into submission. Just like the immortal city, Mu. However, in my eyes, you're just a trash that no one wants. You are far different from the immortal city Mu Yi. Senpai, Jijua Shelley, Hanban Sayaka, Azure Wing Asakani, and Koju's sister, Koju's sister, Koju's Nagisa, rushed to the scene of the incident. I have already dealt with this kid. You guys just arrived. The people from the Lion King organization are indeed unreliable. Choosing something like underwear can take more than 10 times more time than ordinary people. Wu Chen looked at the several women with big and small bags and complained. You guys have guts. How dare you attack us? Don't you know that this island is going to be called Dustless from now on? Hanban Sayaka, who is always the bravest, took a few steps forward. Her eyes were like torches, emitting an oppressive cold light. This guy, Wu Chen rolled his eyes at Huangban Sayaka. His fingertips emitted a huge flash of light as he aimed at that pool of liquid. His eyes emitted endless cold light, and the sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling could be heard. Forget it. If I use that here, it will cause too much of a commotion. After the energy ball condensed for more than 10 seconds, it suddenly extinguished. Under the astonished gaze of several people, Dustless finally turned around and left lazily. A living person turned a deaf ear to it and directly ignored the Amaterasu tribute. Senpai, are you going to let that guy go? Shelley was surprised. Of course not. Don't forget that this is the city. There are too many passers-by. Also, Gong Tenzuka will come to me sooner or later. As long as Canon was around Dustless, Gong Tenzuka would continue to visit him. Shelley's worry was unnecessary. Chapter 1569. Tenzuka Gong's face looked like he had constipation. Today, he came here with a lot of confidence. He thought that he could easily win the fight, but who would have thought that he would be defeated? Just you wait, I won't let this go. His face twisted violently as he glared at Dustless and the others. The cold light in his eyes seemed to imprint Dustless and the others in his heart forever. If I have the chance in the future, I will cut you into pieces. Time flew, and soon it was the next morning. Dustless's house. Why did you buy so much cat food? Do any of you have a cat? I remember that the apartment doesn't allow animals. Dustless sat on the sofa and asked lazily while eating snacks. Also, where are you going? Don't go out if you have nothing to do. You're all good mediums. Tenzuka Gong is watching you. Once you go out, he will follow you like a shadow. Taking a closer look, a Sonian Blue Feather, Shelley, Sayaka, Kawasaka, Nagisa, Hane's Cannon, and La Freya were all ready to go for a hike. Stop nagging. People might think that you are an old man. Hane's Cannon said disdainfully, we have so many people. Can we beat that guy? You are underestimating us. Although we are not as strong as you, we can take care of Tenzuka Gong. Even if you look down on people, you should know when to stop. That's right. The girls nodded. Hane's Cannon looked like a big sister now. You guys, you are right. You can go wherever you want. I can't stop you, but I still need to remind you to leave as soon as possible if you encounter any danger. Dustless thought about it and felt relieved. Hane's Cannon was right. Shelley and Hane's Cannon could easily take care of Tenzuka Gong, so he didn't need to worry about it. Senior, we might not be back in the afternoon. The lunch I prepared yesterday is in the fridge. Shelley's voice came from outside the door. Dustless nodded silently. Looking at the several figures, he couldn't help but feel a little dizzy. Unknowingly, he had stolen Koju's script, let alone Blue Feather and Shelley. Even Koju's sister was temporarily living in his house. It's worth mentioning that Koju is still missing. Lord Dustless. At this moment, a strange monster suddenly emerged from the ground. It was naked, and its skin was pale white. It did not have any gender. This was the white Zetsu that Dustless had specially created to make it easier for him to communicate with Immortal Capital Muyi. Is it done over there? Immortal City Mu, Yez's work efficiency is very high. Putting down the snacks in his hand, Dustless's calm eyes rippled, and his killing intent surged and wreaked havoc. At this moment, in the capital of the first true ancestors' warlord domain, this place was filled with a large number of purple runes. The scale was so large that it covered the entire majestic city. This sudden scene caused the vampires to be confused. I can't use my mana. Could it be Immortal Capital Muyi? I thought she was captured by Dustless, but she sure has guts to come to War Monarch's domain to do something like this. This is as serious as starting a world war. In a luxurious mansion, Vatler frowned. He encountered this situation on Itagami Island as well. It was the day immortal Capital Mu, a Yi, escaped from her prison. Phew! At this moment, immortal Capital Mu, a Yi, was looking at the city filled with mysterious runes and curses. She was a little nervous. She was following Dustless's plan. If Dustless stood her up, immortal Capital Mu, a Yi, would have to face the wrath of War Monarch's domain alone. The first primogenitor, Forgotten War Monarch, was a true powerhouse. Even two Kojus combined wouldn't be his match. Are you trembling? Are you afraid of the first primogenitor? An indifferent voice came from beside immortal Capital Mu, Yi. Immortal Capital Mu, a Yi, was stunned. Her pupils contracted when she saw who it was. She asked in shock, "When did you show up?" "The one who came was Dustless. I left the Flying Thunder God spell on you. I can teleport with a thought." Dustless explained casually. Dustless looked down at the luxurious city. A sharp glint flashed in his eyes. "I don't like to cause trouble, but I'm not afraid of it either. Those who offend me will die, including primogenitors." Dustless's expression was so cold that immortal Capital Mu, a Yi, thought he was a robot. He didn't have any emotions that a living being should have. War Monarch's domain has a lot of people. It's not as simple as Itagami Island. All we need to do is sink the island and everything will be destroyed. It will take a lot of time to get rid of all of them. There were countless elite vampires in this city, and the population was in the tens of millions. Although their magic and special abilities had been removed, even if there were 10 million pigs, it would still take a few months to catch and kill them all. You don't have to worry about that. Dustless was unfazed. His body glowed with a golden light. High-density, materialized chakra was released. A double-faced Kinsusanu appeared and made the same hand seals as Dustless. It's enough to destroy this eyesore, tenebrous, quaking star. Chapter 1570. Immortal Wood, Ayi didn't really understand Dustless's words. She looked at the golden giant and felt a chill run down her spine. She could vaguely see the look in Dustless's eyes, and her expression changed. About a dozen seconds later, the people in the Battle King's domain were at a loss. They suddenly realized that the sky had mysteriously darkened. It was still daytime. Why did it suddenly turn dark? Speaking of which, why are there so many strange things happening recently? Who knows? Perhaps our Battle Monarch domain is so strong that even the gods are afraid of it. Perhaps the heavens are playing a joke on us. Ha ha ha. That's right. The Battle Monarch domain is the strongest among the true ancestors. The people who didn't know what was going on all laughed as they looked at the black shadow in the sky. They were all bored and joking, and it just so happened that Dustless and Immortal Wood, Ayi, heard it. The ignorant are fearless. It's not a bad thing to die happily like this. There were no ripples in his calm eyes. Wu Qin's eyes didn't have the slightest ripple. He maintained his calm from beginning to end. There was nothing to be emotional about this continent that was about to be destroyed. Everything would become history. Look, what's that? A meteorite? Damn it. How are we supposed to block that? Perhaps only the familiars of true ancestors can deal with it. Idiots. Everyone has mysteriously lost their mana and abilities. How are we supposed to summon familiars? Let's run. If we get hit by that thing, we're dead for sure. A bunch of idiots. Look at the area covered by that meteorite. The entire region is under attack. We can escape if we want to, but we'll have to run to another continent. When the meteorite was infinitely close to the ground, the elites of the Battle Monarch domain all panicked. Looking at this unprecedented super meteorite, everyone was scared out of their wits. Some people's hearts were dead. They could already see the tragic scene of the Battle Monarch domain being destroyed. Damn it, it must be Dustless's doing. Only he has such a strange ability. Moreover, Immortal Wood, Ayi, has joined forces with Dustless. Through the window, Vatler stared dumbfoundedly at the falling meteor, his heart filled with despair. In the past, when they still had mana, they could still summon familiars to defend themselves. However, now that everyone's mana had mysteriously disappeared, the vampires were no different from humans. The only thing that awaited them was death. No wonder. No wonder you said that you could end this battle in an instant. Now it seems that it was indeed a one-sided slaughter. The vampires in the Battle King's domain didn't even have the ability to retaliate. Immortal Mu, Yi, was also gasping in shock, her chest heaving up and down. She was quite frightened by the slowly falling meteor. Her beautiful eyes widened. She tried to capture the specific range of the meteor, but found that it had no boundaries. It was as if the meteor was as big as the first true ancestor's battle monarch realm. Time to retreat. Dustless suddenly grabbed Immortal Mu Yi's waist. Just as he was about to leave, a slap came towards him. Pervert! Realizing that she was grabbed by Dustless, Immortal Mu Yi instinctively slapped him. However, in the next second, she regretted it. What if this guy got angry and killed her? Slap! After all, he had destroyed several worlds. How could Dustless be slapped by Immortal Mu Yi? He easily caught the fragrant hand that was attacking him. First of all, Heaven Trembling Star is a spell that will take the enemy down with you. You and I are also in its range. Now that the meteor is about to fall, with your speed, it will be very difficult to escape from its range. If you want to wait for death, then you can stay here and die for the Battle King's domain. Sorry, I still have things to do. Goodbye. Dustless ignored Immortal Mu Yi. Just as he was about to leave, a pair of warm arms wrapped around his waist. Turning his head, he saw that it was Immortal Capital Mu Yi, whose face was filled with awkwardness and depression. You want to die? In the end, you still don't want to die. Wu Chen glanced at Celestial Wood Yi with extreme boredom. He couldn't help but shake his head. With a slight thought, he and Celestial Wood Yi disappeared from the chaotic Battle King domain. The news of the Battle King's domain being destroyed by the meteor will spread all over the world tomorrow. The vampires who lost their mana will be like food on a plate. They won't be able to resist a super meteor with a diameter of more than 10 kilometers. Wu Chun and Xiantu Mu appeared in the empty room. He had set up a flying thunder god as house, so he could return to Itagami Island from War Monarch's domain with just a thought. Where are your little lovers? Immortal Mu Yi looked around curiously and found that there was no one in the room. She stayed in Dustless's room for a while. She was curious about this boss room. Without the master's permission, please do not wander around other people's houses, especially my room. Dustless reminded her with a serious tone. He frowned and said, as for Shelley and the others, if I'm not mistaken, they might have gone to the Adiller Monastery. Cannon had a lot of kittens there. They even bought a lot of cat food before they left. I'm a little worried about them. Let's go take a look. Dustless rubbed his nose helplessly. He found that he couldn't eat or sleep well. There was a fire in his heart that he couldn't calm down. Unknowingly, his mind was affected by the departure of the girls. People change. Dustless's state of mind also changed slightly when he lived under the same roof as the girls. Chapter 1571. Immortal City Mu Yi stared at Dustless in astonishment. As an expert, most people were cold and emotionless. Usually, the more powerful a person was, the colder their personality would be. Not to mention so-called friends. Even if it was a child or wife, they would turn a deaf ear and abandon them at any time. Dustless could barely be considered good boss. Is there something on my face? Sensing Immortal City Mu Yi staring at him, Dustless subconsciously touched his face, thinking that there was something dirty on his face. No. Immortal City Mu Yi gave a short answer. Why are you staring at me? Really? Dustless muttered and left the house. Before he left, he didn't forget to say, stay at home. If you go out and cause trouble, I'll be the first person Nangong not see you will find trouble with. What are you afraid of? Even if you cause a big problem, no one will blame you. Immortal City Mu Yi turned left and right, occasionally going to Dustless's room to sit and tossing around as if looking for something. Stop, you thief! Dustless angrily warned. This guy was too casual and didn't treat him as an outsider at all. Immortal City Mu Yi made a face and ignored Dustless, whose face had darkened. Can't you see that Nangong not see you is very loyal to you? When I say loyal, I don't mean a simple superior and subordinate relationship. I know not Suyu's personality. After all, We were once close friends. What are you trying to say? Dustless frowned and asked, If you have something to say, then say it. I don't have time to listen to your nonsense. You should know that compared to an unemployed person like you, I'm very busy. In any case, Natsuyu cares about you a lot. Immortal City Mu, Yi said meaningfully. At the same time, he looked at Dustless with shining eyes for a while. I really don't know what she sees in you. Boring question. Knowing that Immortal City Mu, Yi was going to say something boring, Dustless immediately closed the door and left. In the quiet corridor, Silver lowered his head and thought. His relationship with Nangon Natsuyu was a bit unusual. No matter how he looked at it, they didn't look like superior and subordinate. Dustless also didn't really treat Natsuyu as a superior. Why are you in a daze? Right at this moment, a black figure appeared before his eyes. She was small and exquisite, and she was cute like a porcelain doll. However, her entire body revealed a wisp of indescribable dignity, and it caused others to be unable to help but become nervous and treat her with respect. Natsuyu? Dustless asked, Why are you looking for me? There don't seem to be any missions. Your little lovers are in trouble. Natsuyu said. There was a hint of dissatisfaction in her tone as she asked, I told you about the Tengaku tribute before. Why did you let Kinase Cannon and the others go to the Adilad monastery? This is a serious matter. After speaking, Nangon Nayu took out her lace-folding fan, as if she wanted to give Wuchen a fan. Hearing this, Dustless was speechless. He couldn't say that he went to destroy the first true ancestors' Battle King domain. Moreover, he didn't let them go to the monastery. However, the stubborn Hanban Sayaka didn't listen. Dustless couldn't do anything about it. Anyway, let's go and take a look. With a sigh, Dustless grabbed Natsuki Nangong and jumped out of the window. He flew straight to the direction of the Adilad monastery. Natsuyu didn't resist being hugged by Dustless. It was a matter of life and death. Even if she wanted to mess around, she had to choose the right time. However, a faint blush appeared on her face. Haha, what a bunch of idiots. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to catch you. Who would have thought that you would take my head? It seems that the heavens haven't abandoned me. A young man wearing a white shirt and a checkered hat laughed. This was the Adillard Monastery. Kinase Cannon had taken care of all the stray cats here. She had planned to leave after buying cat food and feeding them. Who would have thought that she would run into Amatero Kagura? There are so many powerful psychics here. Tensuyu's eyes circled around the girls. He was secretly shocked. Jijwa Shelley, Hanban Sayaka, La Fria, Kinase Cannon, and even Nagisa were all good psychics. Get lost if you don't want to die. You're the one who should be worried. Facing the powerful Tenzuka Gong, Hanzakaka Sayaka chose to fight back decisively. She stood side by side with Jijwa Shelley, and La Freya, who was holding the curse-type spear, was also waiting for an opportunity. Let's get down to business first. I'll deal with you later. Tian Zhonggong was not in a hurry to make a move. He walked slowly to a sculpture that looked a little old, and a deep fanaticism flashed in the depths of his eyes. Immediately, he took out a red sphere and pressed it into it. Gulp! The statue that looked as hard as iron started to move. After a few seconds, it all turned into liquid and fell to the ground. What's this? Azure Wing, Asakani, and Kinase Cannon were weak. When they saw this scene that defied the laws of physics, they both took a step back. Their eyes were filled with fear. You are important tools for me to resurrect that guy. I can't lose a single one of you. As long as I resurrect him, I can become a proper human again. Tensuyu smiled coldly. The unknown liquid on the ground was the spiritual blood of the sage. However, resurrecting wasn't something that could be done easily. It would take a lot of effort. Kinase Cannon was an important tool to resurrect the sage. Chapter 1572. A large amount of bright red blood dripped down and covered the ground. Moreover, it was extremely viscous and extremely disgusting. However, the strange thing was that there was no smell of blood. These two girls are a little troublesome, but taking a peek at Asami Azure Wing and Hanase Natsuin, who were being protected by several people, Kung Amatsuka revealed a sly smile. It was so subtle that ordinary people would not be able to catch it. Capture the hostages and force them to compromise. It's not easy to control the sage's spiritual blood. Master's consciousness is still preserved in it. I have to use pseudo-core refinement to force her out. Tenzuka Gong thought to himself. At the same time, he walked to the corner and took out the items he had prepared in advance. Tian Zhonggong, you ungrateful bastard, a stout middle-aged man scolded. The so-called tool was already a human being with a special pseudo-core inside his body. This was what Amaterasu Kung used to contaminate the sage's spiritual blood and also to force his master out. Once this sage's spiritual blood was awakened, his master, Nina Yadalad, would also wake up. Ungrateful? At the end of the day, you're just using me. Get the hell in, director. Tenzuka Gong ignored him and kicked the stout young man into the sage's spirit blood. The transparent and viscous blood rushed over from all directions like wild cats that smell blood. This person was instantly devoured. How treacherous! Sakura Huangban, Sayaka, Jizhua, Shelley, and the others cursed out loud. Although they didn't know the relationship between Tian Zhonggong and Jizhua, they knew each other without a doubt. Using an acquaintance as a test subject, you're really depraved. The tip of La Freya's curse gun was already aimed at Tenzuka Gong's head. Her eyes were fixed on him, as if she was looking for the right opportunity to give him a fatal blow. Who asked him to want to use me? What makes him think he can obtain the power of the sage? What a joke. This is the price he has to pay for overestimating himself. Gong Tenzuka said disdainfully. At the same time, he stared cunningly at Kinase Natsuya and Isao Blue Feathers. Ayo, 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 ayo. At the same time, the surging blood on the ground suddenly roiled violently, as if it had gone out of control. Countless sharp objects appeared and madly attacked the group. Not only were Jizhua, Shelley, and the other girls attacked, even Tungong was attacked as well. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Jizhua, Shelley, and the others hadn't expected this sudden change of events. They hadn't thought that this disgusting blood could be so cruel, and all of them had suffered a merciless attack. Clang! Clang! Jizhua, Shelley, and the other girls were not weak either. The moment those sages' spirit blood darted over, they launched a fierce counterattack and launched dazzling attacks. Poochie! 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 The tentacle-like sage's spirit blood was immediately shattered. This terrifying tentacle that was as sharp as a blade was only scary on the surface. It ends here. Jizhua Shelley and Hanban Sayaka surrounded Tungong. Tungong stood there motionlessly, as if he had already accepted his fate. However, if someone saw the meaningful smile on his face, they would not think so. That's the end of it. Pointing at Kinase Cannon and Azure Wing Isao, Gong Amatsuka smirked. You two are strong, but your brains are average. I've already said that you two are my targets. Could it be? Jizhua Shelley and Huangban Sayaka glanced at each other, and both of them were stunned. Simultaneously, they turned around to look behind them, and the scene that greeted their eyes made them feel despair. Isao, Azure Wing, and Kinase Cannon had already been subdued by Gong Amatsuka's clone. How treacherous! Huangban Sha and Yahab Horde Evil. The weapon in her hand creaked as it reflected a cold light filled with killing intent. You still want to fight? Gong Amatsuka curled his lips and said disdainfully, You don't realize the desperate situation you're in. Put down your weapons, or I'll kill those two girls. Despicable. Jizhua Shelley's expression changed, and she cursed. However, she had no choice but to put down her snow wolf. You better not fall into my hands. Hanban Sayaka's eyes were filled with ferocity. She threw down her weapon in anger, but she had no choice. They couldn't ignore Kinase Cannon and Azure Wing Isao's lives. You still dare to threaten me? So what if I'm despicable? With a cold face, Tenzuka Gong showed a victorious expression. He casually waved his hand, and all kinds of sharpness appeared. There were countless metal spikes. Bakudo 81, Skybreaker. A transparent barrier as thin as a cicada's wing appeared in front of the two girls. This move, Is it him? Gong Amatsuka's eyelids twitched, and he looked around. He vaguely remembered that when he was beaten up by Dustless, he used the same move. Bang! 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 The barrier that looked like it was broken by a single stab was extremely sturdy, and it easily blocked the attack. The two girls behind the barrier were unharmed. Are you looking for me? You can't escape now. Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind. Tenzuo Gong shuddered and turned his head to look. Surprisingly, it was Wu Chun with a cold expression. Go to hell, asshole. Dustless's appearance immediately awakened the bad memories in Gong Amatsuka's mind. He remembered how he was beaten up by Dustless last time, and he was furious. His hand turned into a huge sword, and he swung it. Clang! Clang! Dustless's eyelids didn't even blink, and he grabbed the sword with a little force. Crack! Crack! The blade, which was completely made of compressed metal, collapsed in an instant, turning into steel fragments all over the ground. It was as simple as crushing an egg. It was very straightforward. Tenzuka Gong was annoyed. Chapter 1573. Tenzuka Gong was exasperated. His sword was not made of ordinary metal. It was made of highly compressed metal. Yet, it was easily crushed by Dustless. His self-esteem was crumbling bit by bit. You don't know when to advance or retreat at all. Do you want to die so much? Dustless frowned and asked. If he didn't kill Tengong, he wouldn't be satisfied. He had never met anyone who loved to die so much. Kill me? I'm afraid you don't have the ability to do so. Tenzuka Gong sneered. Kane's cannon and the other psychics are mine. Then, hearing this, Wu Chen's eyelids lit up. His sight focused on Tung Zhonggong's body. A black light slowly spread out from his head. Please die, Amaterasu. The tiny black flame on his head suddenly grew a few hundred times bigger and engulfed his entire body. Tenzuka Gong was in trouble. Arg! A heart-wrenching scream shook the heavens. Tian Zhonggong was rolling on the ground crazily. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. However, no one pitied such a despicable person. He was the one who brought this humiliation upon himself. Are you all okay? His gaze swept across the girls one by one. When Wu Chen's gaze landed on shallow blue feather, he paused for a few seconds. Looking at the marks on her fair skin, he couldn't help but frown. What happened? Azure Wing was stunned. She looked at the wound on her hand and said, Strange. You're fine just now. How'd you get hurt? Is it because of those tentacle monsters? Azure Wing lowered her head and pondered. She seemed to be trying to figure out where she got hurt. Some things can't be avoided. Is that Nina Yatalad? Dustless sighed in his heart. He sensed a special energy entering Azure Wing's body. However, he did not stop it. There was no harm in it. Dustless could see that the wound on Azure Wing's hand was slowly recovering. Senior, how should we deal with this guy? Joshua Shelley pointed at Tenzuka Gong and said angrily, This kind of person should be purified as soon as possible. That's right. Hanban Sayaka nodded in agreement. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It was also at this moment that a purple light suddenly appeared in the void, forming the pattern of a magic array. Immediately after, a large number of chains shot out from the magic array, all of them shooting towards Tenzuka Gong. Nayu, seeing this, Dustless shook his head and said, This guy's body is a little strange. He can liquefy. This kind of thing is useless. Gulp. Sure enough, just as Dustless said, the moment the chains bound Tenzuka Gong, his body instantly collapsed and turned into a pile of liquid metal. This brat is quite troublesome. Natsuki stood on the magic array with a frown on her face. Her eyebrows were almost knitted together. She was unhappy that she had lost face in front of Dustless and the others. Keek, gloomy laughter suddenly sounded, and the liquid Tan Zhonggong's body was compressed again. With your means, it's too difficult to kill me. Tung Gong laughed complacently, unusually savage. Is that so? Dustless laughed eerily a few times, and a sinister arc appeared on his face. Thump! Tenzuka Gong's heart skipped a beat, and he had a bad premonition. He then shouted, Just you wait. The next time we meet, I'll kill all of you. Next time? Hearing this, Dustless sneered and mocked mercilessly. Now, you'll have to pay a heavy price for this. He focused his gaze on Tenzuka Gong's body and activated his eye power. God's might. A huge ripple appeared on Tenzuka Gong's body, and then a black hole appeared, rapidly devouring his liquid body. Damn it, what is this? Tenzuka Gong shouted in panic and looked at the black hole in fear. He realized that his body was about to be devoured by the black hole. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Just as Tenzuka Gong was about to be devoured, a black light suddenly appeared, and the direction it was aiming at was Tenzuka Gong's body. Boom, boom, boom. Tenzuka Gong's body exploded, and he turned into liquid metal all over the ground. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Then, an unexpected black descended from the sky. It was a white suit, golden hair, and a handsome face. Vatler? Dustless's calm eyes had a rare ripple, and he asked calmly. The first true ancestor's War King domain was attacked by a meteor, and 99% of the area was destroyed. Almost all the people were killed, so why aren't you dead? And your aura seems to have gotten a lot stronger. Why am I not dead? That's a good question. Vatler's face had a smug smile, and then he laughed. Borrowing your words, if there's an exception in this world, then without a doubt, that person is me. This kid's aura is not right. He has Koju's aura. Dustless narrowed his eyes and looked at Vatler carefully, and he said in surprise, could it be that you devoured Koju completely? If that's the case, it's not surprising that you're still alive. You're indeed strong. You can even see that I did devour Koju. After a moment of surprise, Vatler's face was filled with passion, and he said loudly, not just Koju, but also Immortal Mu Yi. Thanks to you and Shinda Mu Yi, I devoured another great person. Chapter 1574. A powerful figure. Dustless stared at Vatler. As a true ancestor, Akatsuki Koju was already a powerful figure. Judging from Vatler's arrogant tone, it was obvious that he had devoured an existence stronger than Akatsuki Koju. You didn't devour the first true ancestor, did you? Everyone stared at Vatler, tongue-tied. After devouring 2 true ancestor-level vampires in succession, it was easy to imagine Vatler's strength. He definitely soared to the heavens in a single bound. As expected of my old enemy. Hearing this, Vatler laughed maniacally. His arms trembled as he shouted, yes, thanks to you and Shiamu Aya's interference in the War King's domain, all of our powers were suppressed. All vampires, whether they were nobles or vampires from the apocalypse, were turned into ordinary humans. True ancestors were no exception. I took advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to devour the first true ancestor, and, at the same time, Akatsuki Koju became my meal. Ha! At the end of his sentence, Vatler let out a maniacal laugh. Life is unpredictable. I didn't expect you to be the one to benefit. Dustless sighed. He didn't expect this to happen. Through the Tensigan, Dustless could see the majestic, demonic energy in Vatler's body. After devouring 2 true ancestors, Vatler's strength had surpassed that of a true ancestor. It seems that you're the biggest winner. Dustless sighed. Ordinary people would be scared to even see a true ancestor, let alone devouring a true ancestor. Vatler's success wasn't without reason. Don't you feel like you shot yourself in the foot? This is all thanks to you, Mr. Old Enemy. Vatler laughed maniacally. He opened his eyes wide and stared at Wu Chun, trying to catch a glimpse of pain on his face. However, Wu Chun did not move at all. There was no change in his expression. Shot myself in the foot. Are you an idiot? Wu Chun sneered unreservedly. Although your appearance is unexpected, it can barely relieve my boredom. In this boring life, only the existence of a clown like you can make me feel the joy and value of living. You, even if you're arrogant, you should know when to stop. Do you think I'm still the old me? Wrong, a big mistake. Vatler said arrogantly. As long as I want to, you won't even have time to react. Bang, bang, bang. Before Vatler finished his sentence, an explosion sounded in the air. Boom, boom, crack, crack. Vatler's abdomen, cave in his abdomen, was almost penetrated through his chest. Vatler's face was contorted in pain. The immense pain caused his body to lose support, and he rolled on the ground in agony. How can you defeat me? Vatler looked at the approaching black figure. His expression was cold and filled with disdain and disdain. It was as if he was looking at an insect. Vatler's pride was hurt, and he roared, "Sorcery! You must have used some sorcery. A mere bat. You seem to have lost your sense of measure. Do you really think the so-called true ancestors are invincible? Do you really think you can fight me after devouring 2 true ancestors? Let me tell you, even if I devour 100 true ancestors, I can still easily destroy you. You don't even know who is standing in front of you, and you still think you can defeat me?" The sound of rolling thunder exploded in the boundless horizon. The surroundings were dead silent, dead silent. A few hundred years ago, I stepped into a realm you cannot imagine. To be honest, I don't even know how strong I am now. Dustless grabbed Vatler's head and stared at his caved-in abdomen. His fingertips emitted large amounts of light. Crack, crack, crack. A huge flash of light crackled, and the surrounding space twisted and was shattered by the energy ball. Then Dustless threw Vatler into the distant sky like he was throwing trash. A huge energy ball appeared along with it. Wong Su's flash. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A huge silver beam of light pierced through the sky, and the space in its path exploded, leaving a conspicuous trace as it rushed towards Vatler. Boom, boom, boom. The void flash suddenly exploded, and the blue sky was covered by a flash of light. Everyone hurriedly closed their eyes, or else they might be blinded by the light. Gulp! The girls choked and looked at Dustless in shock. It was the first time they had seen Dustless go crazy. Cold sweat flowed down their backs, and the overwhelming power made them gasp for breath. When a strong person's strength reached a certain level, they would develop a unique aura. Just like the Haushika Haki, it had a powerful deterrent force. I didn't hit him. After that kid swallowed 2 true ancestors, his strength really increased. I almost pierced his abdomen, but he could still escape. Unbelievable. Not only did his strength increase, but his body's recovery also increased. A cold voice suddenly sounded. Dustless turned around and saw that it was Nagisa. No, it was more appropriate to call her Agrora. TSK, TSK, TSK. This is going to be a good show. This guy swallowed Akatsuki Koju and indirectly angered Agrora. Dustless gloated. In fact, he wanted to thank Vatler. He was worried about how to get rid of Akatsuki Koju without Agrora noticing, and now Vatler had helped him a lot. He took the initiative to take the blame for Dustless. Sure enough, male protagonists were often the best scapegoats. Chapter 1575. Dustless was quite excited. He had guessed that Vatler would kill Koju, but that was only after Koju had awakened all of his familiars. He didn't expect Vatler to be so eager to devour Koju, which indirectly angered Agrora. But, staring at the raging Agrora, Dustless hesitated. Vatler was no longer the same as before. Not only did he devour Akatsuki Koju, but he also used the power of the Dark Oath Book to devour the first true ancestor. With the power of 2 true ancestors, his strength would inevitably increase. Would Agrora be his match? Agrora, I advise you not to humiliate yourself. You're not my target. If you try to stop me, I'll let you have a taste of your familiar's power. Also, if you don't know what's good for you, I don't mind taking back your 12th familiar. Vatler was clearly not interested in Agrora. His gaze was fixed on Dustless, and the pitch-black mana bursting out of his body was almost solid. It was filled with a soul-stirring power, and its precision, range, and quantity were all greater than Agrora's. Boom, boom, boom. Agrora wasn't someone who would back down easily. Her immature body once again erupted with a burst of ice-cold magic power, and the surrounding temperature dropped by several hundred times. It became incomparably cold and almost instantly engulfed the surrounding forest, turning them all into ice sculptures. Seriously, this guy. Dustless quickly ran to Jijua, Shelley, and the others. He opened his golden Kinsusinu to protect them. He knew that this was Aurora's familiar, the Enchantress's deep ice. Its ability was to freeze everything. How did Nagisa become like this? Blue Feather asked worriedly. In her current state, Nagisa was as cold as ice. She was like an ice goddess who didn't want anyone to get close to her. She was the complete opposite of her usual optimistic self. She was completely isolated from the world. That bone-piercing killing intent made Blue Feather feel even more fearful. Aurora probably isn't Vatler's match. Dustless shook his head. Honestly speaking, Dustless wasn't optimistic about her chances. After all, Vatler had devoured 2 primogenitors. There was no doubt that he had mana, and judging from his confident tone, he even had Koju's familiar under his control. Who ambushed me? Right at this time, Dustless suddenly felt a piercing pain at his waist. He grimaced in pain as he turned his head and scolded angrily. If you dare to pinch me next time, your buttocks will bloom. The one who ambushed Dustless without warning was not Suki Nangong. Taking advantage of Wu Chen's carelessness, her jade hands swept towards the tender flesh of Wu Chen's waist and unceremoniously made a 360-degree turn. When did the first primogenitor's war king domain get destroyed? What's the meaning of Vatler's breath? Did you do it? Not Suki Nangong's eyes fixed on Dustless. I only killed a few stinky bats. What's there to be surprised about? Also, the most annoying thing is that Vatler, that eyesore, didn't get smashed to death by the meteor and even devoured the first primogenitor in Koju. Why is that damned brat so lucky? Dustless was speechless. He felt that Vatler had stolen Koju's protagonist aura. You destroyed the entire Darkness Empire, just like that. You're starting a war. A dangerous character like you is a cancer that will bring disaster to the world. Not Suki Nangong's chest heaved up and down. She was so shocked by the news that her worldview had collapsed. Ever since the primogenitors appeared, they were considered invincible. Now, Dustless had destroyed the War King domain in the blink of an eye. Not Suki Nangong felt dizzy and her brain couldn't handle it. But I saw on TV yesterday that the War King domain was going to sign a peace treaty with other countries. Now that it's destroyed, isn't it too fast? It's impossible to destroy an entire Darkness Empire in a day. Not Suki Nangong said doubtfully. Not Suki, there's nothing to doubt. This is the truth. I was the one who destroyed the War King domain with him. I saw it with my own eyes. A melodious and lazy sound of nature drifted over. Following the source of the sound, what came into view was Shindu Muyi, who was wearing a kimono. You too, not Suki Nangong, fell silent. She found it hard to accept. The people in the War King domain weren't idiots. They wouldn't stretch out their necks for others to slaughter. Moreover, there were at least a few 100 million people in the War King domain. How could they be wiped out in a day? No matter how unbelievable it is, the truth is the truth. Wu Chan held his head indifferently, as if it had nothing to do with him. I used the power of the Dark Oath Book to eliminate all the superpowers and magic of the War King domain. Naturally, the true ancestor was also weakened. Then, Dustless summoned a giant meteorite from space. Summoned a meteor? Not Suki Nangong's eyes widened. She stared at Dustless as though she was looking at a freak. Was this something a human could do? But how did Vatler escape the meteor attack? Immortal Mu, a Yi, could not understand. His heart was full of doubts. That's simple. Dustless had a clear mind. The Dark Oath Book is powerful and can restrict the power of a primogenitor. However, after Vatler devoured the first primogenitor in Koju, his strength has surpassed the primogenitor level. Every item has its own limit, just like how my Dark Oath Book can't restrict it. I reckon that after Vatler devoured Koju and the first primogenitor, he also obtained a power greater than the Dark Oath Book. That's why it's useless against him. It's normal for him to use a power greater than a primogenitor to avoid being locked on by heaven's love. Everything had a limit, and Immortal Mu Aye's Dark Oath Book was no exception. Chapter 1576. Natsuya remained silent. She knew Shindu Muyi well. There was no need for him to lie to her about something like this. It was impossible to hide something like this, and it would probably spread across the world by tomorrow. She stared at the calm, dustless, in shock. She was 100% sure that the person who destroyed the Battle Monarch's domain was the doing of this seemingly harmless fellow. Senior, did you really destroy the first true ancestor's Battle Monarch domain? Jijua Shelley raised her voice and stood in front of Dustless with her snow wolf. You, seeing this, Wu Chun was even more speechless. Looking at the snow cloud wolf, he asked with a headache, "You're not planning to avenge the first true ancestor, are you? If that's the case, avenge? What a joke." Before Dustless could finish, Hanban Sayaka stepped out and said with hatred, "The so-called vampires are all evil people who ride on the heads of humans. The destruction of the Battle Monarch domain is a blessing from the heavens." Ha ha ha. La Freya was the most excited. She was so excited that she started dancing. La Freya's country, the kingdom of Aldija, bordered the Battle Monarch domain. Some conflicts were inevitable, but the kingdom of Aldija was no match for the Battle Monarch domain. It was inevitable that they would be bullied and threatened. Now that the enemy that had accumulated years of grievances was destroyed, of course they would be happy. After all, the other party was the powerful Empire of Darkness, second to none in terms of strength. They also had a colossal existence like the true ancestor and countless vampires under their command. This wasn't something the Aldisha kingdom could contend against. Moi. While Dustless was feeling helpless, La Freya pursed her lips and left a light kiss on his face to show her gratitude. Seems like the true ancestor's Empire of Darkness is hated. He stared at La Freya in bewilderment. He hadn't been in this world for long, so he didn't feel much about the true ancestor. But for other humans, the true ancestor was a nightmare. If it weren't for the Treaty of Sanctum, perhaps the human race would have already ceased to exist. Boom, boom, boom. Bang, bang, bang. A fierce shockwave suddenly burst out, and Agrora, who had been fighting with Vatler, was sent flying by the boundless mana. He was as weak as a kite with its string cut. Just as I expected, Vatler's strength has increased tremendously after devouring 2 primogenitors. He's even stronger than the average primogenitor. Not only that, he can also use Koju's familiars. He might even be able to use the first primogenitor's familiar. TSK, TSK. No wonder he dared to cause trouble for me. He has enough capital this time. Dustless nodded slightly. The current Vatler barely had the qualifications to be looked at in a new light. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. Dustless stretched out his hand to grab Agrora as he watched her fly away. He joked, "Miss Agrora, with your current ability, it seems that you're far inferior to Vatler." Who, Agrora finally calmed down after falling into Kinsusanu's protection. She glared at Vatler, who was laughing maniacally, and felt a sense of defeat. Dustless was speaking the truth. Vatler was no longer the same as before. His strength had increased exponentially, and he could control familiars that even Koju couldn't. Dustless lowered his head and laughed dryly. He revealed a sinister smile. "Aren't you a vampire? Why don't you suck my blood? Who knows? There might be an unexpected surprise." "Are you crazy?" Hearing this, Nangong Natyue and the others were stunned. Just how strange was this guy? How could he take the initiative to let others suck his blood? "It's a good idea, but it's useless. I'm only a consciousness now. My blood-sucking instincts have already disappeared." Agrora's eyes dimmed. "That's a pity. Looks like I'll have to deal with this kid myself." Wu Chan showed a disappointed expression when he heard that. Then, his eyes lit up and he said, "Although your current strength is worthy of special treatment, you are just a bat after all. Is that so?" Vatler glared at Dustless and Kinsusanu and shouted, "I'll break your shell now. Let's see if your body is as tough as your shell." Pa pa pa. As soon as his voice fell, golden lightning swept across the void, and all of them blasted onto Susanu. Boom, boom, boom. A huge roar resounded through the clouds. The unparalleled lightning was extremely powerful, and the surrounding forest was directly razed to the ground, revealing the bare, scorched earth. However, what surprised Vatler was that the golden Kinsusanu was unharmed. Dustless's location was like a god's domain. Even if he used everything he had, He couldn't break through the golden monster's powerful defense. Let's see how strong your shell is. Vatler's face twitched. His right arm suddenly turned black, covered with red lines, and boundless mana spread out. After devouring Koju, Vatler had gained control of Koju's familiar. Although it required a spirit medium, it was a piece of cake for Vatler. As long as he could awaken the familiar, it didn't matter whether it was a man or a woman. Since I'm not your match in a one-on-one battle, all of you come out. Familiars number 3, Dragonsnake Quicksilver, number 5, Lion's Gold, number 9, Twin Horn Scarlet, number 11, Aqua White Steel. Chapter 1577. Vatler roared with all his might. In front of him, 4 ferocious-looking super beasts appeared, each of them exuding a domineering aura that could shake a person's soul. Their eyes were filled with awe and veneration. Boom! 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 The 4 vassal beasts attacked fiercely, and a fierce shockwave hit Susanoo head-on. Susanoo began to sway, and a ka-ka-ka sound could be heard. The effect of a few familiars working together is not bad. Dustless looked around and found that the miniature Susanoo wasn't strong enough to fend off the 4 familiars. Small cracks had already appeared on its surface. He's indeed different from a true ancestor. Is he stronger than a true ancestor? Dustless stared at Vatler curiously. The incomplete Susanoo wasn't even 1/10 as strong as the complete Susanoo, but the fact that Vatler could destroy it showed how strong he was. This is just the beginning. You underestimated me. Seeing that his attack was finally effective, Vatler shouted in a loud voice, Familiars number 4, Silver Mist, come out as well. After saying that, more than 5 familiars appeared. It was an extremely powerful lineup. Vatler was surrounded by them. Not only that, Vatler even awakened his original snake-like familiar and brought out all of his assets. Gulp! Jijua, Shelley, and the others choked with sobs. Looking at the dozens of familiars, they felt like their brains weren't enough. Vatler was ridiculously strong. The familiars bared their fangs and looked ferocious, as if they were going to devour their prey. At the same time, the familiars under Vatler's control launched powerful attacks. Each familiar had a different ability. Colorful magic power exploded in the air, filling the air with colorful lights. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. Lightning flashed, shaking the sky. The 5th familiar, Lion's Gold, was the first to launch a powerful attack. A large number of lightning bolts fell from the sky. Roar! Not only that, but the rest of the familiars were also working well together, much better than Koju's half-baked familiars. The 9th familiar, Scarlet Feet, leaped into the air and gently tapped its feet on the ground, causing ripples to spread out. BZZ, BZZ. The destructive light wave was unrestrained, and finally, it eroded the incomplete Susanoo. The originally weak crack suddenly emitted a ka-ka-ka-ka sound, and the originally negligible crack became bigger and bigger. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, the 5th familiar, Lion's Gold, also roared towards the sky. Dense and irregular golden lightning bolts pounced towards Susanoo's head and bombarded it with full force. Boom, boom, boom. After receiving consecutive devastating blows, the badly damaged Susanoo was finally unable to resist and helplessly headed towards collapse. This badly damaged Susanoo was originally a dregs. It belonged to the type with thin skin, and there was a world of difference between it and a high-grade Susanoo released at full strength. This is a good opportunity. Get rid of those people for me. Dragon Snake Mercury. Vatler's eyes flashed. He waved his hand, and a giant bird flew out. It opened its mouth full of fangs and bit at Dustless and the others. This is bad. This guy really knows how to cooperate. Agrora frowned. He didn't expect Vatler to be able to use the power of the 4th primogenitor so well. He was different and more suitable than Koju to be the 4th primogenitor. You deserve praise. Dustless smiled. He looked at Vatler for a few seconds, then said coldly, But I hate people who overestimate themselves. No one can save you this time. I will kill you. Dustless's scarlet eyes turned at full speed. Black flames danced in his eyes as he locked on a dragon snake Mercury. Amaterasu. The black flames were aimed at dragon snake Quicksilver. They thought they could burn him alive, but what happened next was unexpected. Amaterasu didn't burn the target as usual. It couldn't burn the familiar at all. It could only watch as dragon snake Mercury pounced at it. What's going on? The girls asked in surprise. They weren't normal people, so they could see what was going on. Dragon snake Mercury's body seemed to have disappeared in an instant. This guy. Dustless frowned and looked at Vatler in surprise. Vatler was a battle maniac, but he was surprisingly smart. This is his fourth familiar, Silver Shell Mist. Its ability is an expanded version of the vampire's ability to turn into mist. Creatures and buildings can be turned into mist within a certain range. Everything will lose their original form and substance. This ability to turn substances into mist is one of the fastest ways to move around. Without a physical body, it also meant that Dustless's attack was useless. It was like hitting the air and would not have any effect. I told you before, don't treat me like an idiot like Koju. That kid may be a true ancestor, but if I want to kill him, it'll be a piece of cake. Vatler said proudly. Ayo, 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 ayo. At the same time, the dragon snake's Mercury attacked rapidly. Its big mouth full of fangs opened and emitted a dense cold air. It seemed that it was going to swallow Wuchan. He's forcing me to make a big fuss. He wanted to take care of Vatler easily, but he didn't expect him to be so skillful with his familiars. Even a miniature Kinsusanu was destroyed. Let's be serious. Otherwise, Vatler will really think he's invincible. At most, this island will sink. At worst, I'll give them the warlord's domain as compensation. Chapter 1578. Dustless murmured. Hearing him, the faces of Ji Zhua, Shelley, Nangong Nayu, and the others changed dramatically. They all stared at Dustless with gloomy faces. Don't look at me like you want to eat me alive. This guy is the one who forced me. If I don't show my true face, Vatler will really think that I'm made of mud. Dustless's face was as cold as frost. His chiseled face was filled with coldness. I also want to see if you have 8 heads, or if you have horns on your head. Vatler snorted, unwilling to be outdone. Ow, ow. Woo, woo, woo. At the same time, he waved his hand and summoned several vassal beasts. Due to the size of the vassal beasts, they swayed as they walked, causing the ground to shake. Boom, boom, boom. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Once again, thick golden lightning descended from the sky. It was as frightening as the punishment of the heavens. Pa, pa, pa. Lightning bolts that were powerful enough to flatten a mountain surged around Dustless. His body was constantly being destroyed, severely ravaged by the scorching heat and lightning. However, he stood tall and didn't fall. His calm expression didn't change at all. If one looked carefully, they would be astonished to discover that although Wu Qin's body was continuously destroyed, his wounds would overflow with a warm light that rapidly healed the wounds on his body. When he was attacked by the lightning, he would be healed almost instantly. How is this possible? Vatler's mouth was wide open, his jaw almost dislocated. He stared at Dustless and subconsciously rubbed his eyes, thinking that he was hallucinating. However, after wiping his eyes, he saw an even more unbelievable scene. He said in a daze, "Is this guy immune to my lightning? Since you are immune to my attacks, then why can't I be immune to yours?" Dustless glanced at him and asked calmly, "You think you are special? Do you think you can do something that others can't? Don't be naive. Your current level. I actually reached it a few hundred years ago." Nangong Nayu and the others all had strange expressions on their faces. A few hundred years ago? Could it be that this guy was already a few hundred years old? Is he an old man? Nangong Natanyu had a strange expression on her face. Dustless was only 17 or 18 years old. Old man? Dustless's mouth twitched, and he glared at Nangong Nayu. "Although you can turn into mist, but..." Dustless suddenly said with a strange smile, "In front of absolute power, all abilities are just a joke." Boom, boom, boom. Dustless chuckled as he stared at the mist in the sky. The only reason you can turn into mist is because you're borrowing the power of the fourth familiar, Cloud Shell. The mist it spits out can turn everything into mist. But if the mist disappears, will you still be of any use? Make my fog disappear? Vatler laughed and mocked loudly. Are you crazy? Don't say such childish words. You have to understand that the mist created by my familiar has already covered the entire island. Do you think you can make it disappear just because you want to? So what? Dustless asked casually. At the same time, he took out a slender tachi and shouted, Bankai! Tragic fire tachi! Buzz, buzz, buzz! The unassuming saber immediately emitted a wisp of hot steam. Nothing else changed except that the saber became even more ancient and weathered. You think you can get rid of my mist with this stupid tachi? Dream on. Vatler curled his lips and was about to laugh when he raised his head. His expression changed drastically. In the void, a large amount of water evaporated inexplicably. The fog that covered the sky was also quickly dispersing. Suddenly, the air became extremely dry. All the water in the sky was evaporating at an accelerated rate. What is going on? Jijua and the others were shocked. They were shocked to find that the water in their bodies was evaporating at an accelerated rate. Their sweat was gone with the wind. Not only that, but the surrounding wild animals, flowers, and trees all turned yellow and withered in an instant. The lush green grassland turned yellow and withered. This guy, not Suki, stared at Dustless. She could clearly feel that all the water in the sky was evaporating and the mist was dispersing. The essence of the mist is water. If I evaporate all the water in the world, will you still be able to create this mist? The answer is no. If possible, I don't want to use Zanka no Tachi. This Zanka no Tachi is too powerful. The moment I use Bankai, all the water in the world will evaporate. Dustless explained in a soft voice. At the same time, the mist in the sky was dispersing and was being devoured by Zanka no Tachi. That's impossible. Vatler's face turned green. He could feel all the water in the world evaporating. Even the lakes around him turned into dry land. All the water sources were wiped out. Die. He calmly glanced at the 5 vassal beasts. Their true forms were completely exposed, and he swung his Zanka no Tachi at the terrified vassal beasts. Zanka no Tachi, north, ashes of heaven and earth. Puchi, the saber aura that seemed as weak as a breeze, immediately revealed its ferocious side. When it came into contact with the familiar beast, it didn't release any explosive flames or slash at all. It simply dismembered and devoured the familiar beast, vanishing without a trace in the blink of an eye. One swing and one end, this was the most realistic portrayal of Zanka no Tachi. Chapter 1579. How many unbelievable abilities does this guy have? And what's with that weapon? Could it be the weapon of the gods? Vatler's face turned green as he stared at Zanka no Tachi. He couldn't hide the greed in his eyes. This weapon was too overpowered. Vatler's heart raced as he was tempted by Zanka no Tachi. He was even more excited than when he devoured the primogenitor. From the attack range, scale, and power, Zanka no Tachi was far more powerful than the familiars. It was as if the entire world was under the shadow of Zanka no Tachi. Gulp! Vatler's heart was about to jump out of his chest. That super weapon should be mine. Only someone like me can wield it. Vatler stared at the Zanka no Tachi in Dustless's hand with a pained expression as if Dustless had stolen his treasure. Did a donkey kick this guy in the head? Dustless had a strange expression on his face as he sent out another wave of Zanka no Tachi. It was normal to be greedy for Zanka no Tachi. Thinking back to when Old Man Yamamoto released his Zanpakuto, Dustless was also envious and jealous. All in all, Vatler's performance was within Dustless's expectations. Shoo, shoo, shoo. The sharp sound of something breaking through the air resounded through the clouds. Raising his head, he saw a super hot storm sweeping over. Everything it came in contact with was turned into ashes. Zanka no Tachi, north, ashes of heaven and earth. The target of the Zampicudo was the familiar in the sky, crimson with two horns. It was going to crush the crimson horse like a whale. Roar, 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 roar. Needless to say, the two-horned Shinfei would definitely not sit and wait for death. He immediately roared towards the sky. His sharp horns lightly pointed towards the void, and a wisp of energy rippled out in the horizon, attempting to stop or even destroy the blade that was attacking him. Poochie. The idea was good, but the reality was too cruel. The ripple of energy that didn't materialize was vaporized by the high temperature of Zanka no Tachi before it could reach the Zampicudo. Ayo, 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 ayo. The two-horned crimson cried out in fear, asking for help from Vatler. However, Vatler was petrified, also stunned by the ferocious Zanka no Tachi. For a moment, he was frozen in place. Swish, swish. Seeing that its master was scared silly by the enemy, the double-horned crimson quickly moved its body and waved its four limbs, trying to escape the lock of the saber aura. This guy was too scary. Poochie. Compared to the galloping stellar energy, the two-horned crimson was simply too slow. It was dismembered in the blink of an eye, just like the other familiars. He did not release bursting flames, nor did he release a slash. He only erased everything that came into contact with him. Damn it. Seeing this, Vatler cursed loudly. He hadn't expected Dustless to be so terrifying. He was practically a god of death. Anything that came into contact with him would evaporate into thin air. All of you, attack together. Vatler ordered the remaining familiars to attack together. This was his last desperate attempt. Since he couldn't fight him alone, he could only order all his familiars to surround him. Laughable. Dustless shook his head in disdain, a ruthless glint in his eyes. His entire body began to glow like a scorching sun, golden flames burning fiercely. Oh, the familiars opened their mouths. Just as they were about to swallow Dustless whole, the golden flames on Dustless's skin suddenly grew several times larger. Zanka Flame Tachi, Sunbreaker Prison Robe. The golden flames were dazzling to the extreme. The attacking familiars were instantly obliterated. Several of the familiars that had wanted to attack Dustless were instantly annihilated. The terrifying heat of over 15 million degrees pulverized everything. Zanka Flame Tachi's highest temperature was close to the core of the sun, around 15 million degrees. The familiars were burned alive before they could even get close to Dustless. You're the only one left. Dustless slowly approached Vatler, a dangerous light flickering in his eyes. Damn it, Vatler was drenched in cold sweat. He didn't dare look Dustless in the eye. He was afraid that he would fall to his knees and surrender. I won't kill you. I'll just take your soul, and then I'll throw you into the sea to feed the sharks. Before Dustless could finish, Agurola gnashed his teeth and glared at Vatler. He looked like he wanted nothing more than to skin Vatler alive. Idiot, I hope you don't piss off any more women in your next life. He glanced at Vatler with pity. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame this guy for devouring Koju and angering Agurola. He was determined to avenge Koju. Go to hell. Zanka Flame Tachi's power was suppressed to the limit. Dustless's body flashed, and under Vatler's shocked gaze, the flames swept towards his head. Poochie. Vatler's head was separated from his body. Dustless had killed him with a single slash. Letting him die so easily is too easy for this hateful guy. In my opinion, it would be better to throw him into the sea to feed the sea creatures. Agurola coldly snorted. His eyes were red, as if he was still grieving over Koju's death. Then he'll contaminate the fishes, Dustless said half-jokingly. The girls burst into laughter. However, Dustless decided to kill Vatler after careful consideration. This guy had devoured 2 primogenitors. If he did as Agurola said and fed him to the fishes, what if he revived? A primogenitor's regenerative abilities were abnormal. Dustless felt that it was safer to kill Vatler directly. Chapter 1580. Expressionlessly staring at Vatler's body, Dustless finally decided to take the final step, which was to extract his soul. The soul of a true ancestor was undeniably powerful, and there were two of them. In addition, Vatler himself was the monster closest to a true ancestor. Devouring them would be beneficial to Dustless. You guys go back first. Leave this place to me and Agrora. Waving his hand, Dustless signaled the others to go back. You too. Gazing at Dustless and Agrora suspiciously, Natsuki sensed something unusual. Her bright eyes swept over Dustless and Agrora, trying to find a flaw. Us too? Do you have any malicious intentions? Agurola's small face looked rather strange when she heard this. She stared at Wu Chun in a puzzled manner. I remember you guys still have school, right? It's almost 1 o'clock now. Be careful not to be late. Dustless reminded Jizhua and Shelley out of kindness. Oh no, I'll let you go this time. The girls retreated in fear. For good students like them, being late for class was a serious matter. What do you plan to do? 10 seconds later, all the girls scattered and rushed to the Kai-Hai Academy. Only Nangong Nayu, Agurola, and Dustless were left. The one who spoke was Natsuki. She continued, Don't tell me you want to. Nangong's eyes, which were as exquisite as spring water, were filled with a strange expression. Seeing Dustless staring at Agurora's pretty face without blinking, she suddenly understood something. She said in disdain, You want to kill Koju's sister as soon as he dies? You'll even get Agrora for free. Buy one, get one free business. Kid, you're quite scheming. Poochie. Hearing this, Dustless spat out a mouthful of blood. The corners of his mouth twitched. Don't think you can slander me as you wish just because you're my boss. I can sue you for slander. You should know the consequences of slandering me. Dustless stared at Natsuki. He was sure that she did it on purpose. I can revive you. Staring at Xiao Nagisa's face, Dustless knew that Agrora was the only one controlling this body. He said confidently, With my power, it won't be a problem to use the outer Tao, reincarnation heavenly art. Oh, upon hearing that, Agrora only responded softly and wasn't as excited as imagined. Then, he suddenly realized something urgent and asked, Can we revive the ancient city? Absolutely not. Dustless refused without thinking. Resurrecting Akatsuki Koju? What a joke. That annoying vampire bat was finally dead. Who would resurrect him now? Is that so? Agrora's bright eyes clearly dimmed, without any luster to speak of. It could be seen that Koju's sudden departure was a big blow to her. I'm sure that if Koju's spirit is in heaven, he would want you to live on. Natsuki added, You can't waste his good intentions. That's right. Dustless gave her a thumbs up and sighed inwardly at how good Natsuki was at talking. He then said softly, The first true ancestor's soul, Koju's soul, and Vatler's soul have completely fused. The three of them have fused into one. That's why Vatler's strength increased explosively. Next, I'll use the same method to fuse the two of you. You mean Agrora was stunned for a moment before asking in astonishment, You're willing to let me devour their souls? Did I hear wrongly? After devouring the souls of 3 powerhouses, anyone's strength will increase by leaps and bounds. You didn't hear wrongly. Looking into Agrora's eyes, Dustless calmly replied, In the end, it's yours. Vatler and the first true ancestor souls are only incidental interest. This guy is quite open-minded. Natsuki felt a trace of admiration for Dustless's attitude. Anyone would feel a desire to possess a true ancestor's soul. Even she couldn't let go of it. Dustless's carefree attitude made Natsuki view him in a new light. In truth, this weak soul had little effect on Dustless. Let's go to Koju's mother's place to retrieve your main body. With that, the three of them left together. Their destination was Koju's mother's house, Koju's laboratory. Koju's sudden death was a great blow to his mother. Koju's mother was exceedingly sad. She even almost fainted. When she learned that Vatler had fused with the first true ancestor in Koju's soul, she knew that it was already too late. Even if she could revive Koju, he wouldn't be the same person as before. Inside the cold and deathly silent laboratory, lying on the experiment table, was a pretty girl. She wasn't very old, probably between 12 to 14 years old. She had a head of gorgeous rainbow-colored hair and a pale and powerless face. This was Aurora's original body. Can such an unimaginable thing really be done? Koju's mother looked at Dustless suspiciously, although she hated Dustless very much. Who told this guy to bully her son? But now that Koju has died and Dustless killed Vatler, it was equivalent to avenging her son. She had a good impression of Dustless. Unimaginable thing? Reviving a person is just a small matter for me, Dustless said with a light smile, full of confidence. Staring at Aurora on the operating table, Dustless suddenly shouted and activated Rinnegan Sharingan. Outer Path, Rinnegan Technique. Chapter 1581. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Dustless. They did not expect him to have such a heaven-defying ability to bring someone back from the dead. Was this something a human could do? At the very least, none of them believed that anyone could do it. I would like to see if you were really that capable. Nangong Natsiyu placed her hands on her hips. Her expression was extremely proud, as if she was waiting for Dustless to fail so that she could ruthlessly ridicule him. However, she was destined not to have such an opportunity. A layer of azure light covered Aurora's body. It was like a miraculous elixir that completely sunk into Aurora's body. Following that, a miraculous scene gradually occurred. Aurora's pale face gradually regained some color. Her cold body also rapidly warmed up. She could even move her fingers slightly. Can you really do it? Nangong Natsiyu looked at the scene in front of her in a daze. Her jaw almost dropped to the ground. You can't be one of the gods recorded in the Bible, right? Xiao Shunsin stared at Dustless. His sharp eyes tried to see through Dustless's essence. This is just the outer Tao, reincarnation of heaven technique. It is one of my countless abilities. There is nothing to be surprised about. Facing the astonished gazes of the others, Dustless was abnormally calm. This world is terrible. Nangong Natsiyu suddenly sighed. The first true ancestor's Battle King domain was destroyed by Dustless. Akatsuki Kokung was also devoured. In short, there were too many things that happened. Now, a monstrous character like Dustless had appeared. His strength completely surpassed the so-called true ancestor. She felt that the end of the world had arrived. Ding ding. Aurora, who was on the operating table, unconsciously let out a low groan. Shortly after, under the expectant gazes of the others, she opened her watery eyes that were as pure and flawless as gemstones. Am I really resurrected? Aurora, who opened her eyes, said in disbelief. She subconsciously pinched her skin. The pain made her realize that this was not a dream. She had her own body temperature. Of course, this kind of thing is as easy as pie for me. Dustless smiled and said, I have already fused the souls of Akatsuki Kokun, the first true ancestor, and Vatler into your body. I estimate that you will only need a period of time to adapt, and you will be able to obtain their full strength. Thank you. Aurora bowed sincerely. It's a small matter. Dustless waved his hand, indicating that he didn't need to care about it. There was no need to thank him for this kind of thing. He only consumed the eye power of the Sharingan, and it didn't have any fatal effect on himself. In that case, Nagisa will be free from now on. Xiao Shunsun was relieved. He had already lost Koju, and his future depended on his daughter. It would be best if Aurora could leave Nagisa's body. After chatting for a while, Dustless and the others left Xiao Shunsun's laboratory. Aurora also left with them. She didn't have a place to stay for the time being, so she just so happened to be staying in Koju's house. In any case, Koju was already dead. At Dustless's house, Jijua and Shelley had already finished school and returned home before Dustless. When they saw Dustless and Aurora coming back together, everyone frowned and secretly admired Dustless's luck with women. Perhaps Dustless didn't realize that a large number of beautiful women had already gathered at his house. Although many of them came inexplicably, it was undeniable that everyone was now living under the same roof. La Freya, that guy can't be possessed by the peach blossom god, right? It must be because he is too strong that a lot of people want to hug his thick thigh. Hanban Sayaka was speechless. Dustless's unique charm was all attributed to the source of his strength. Since ancient times, beautiful women loved heroes. This sentence was not wrong. Especially people like Dustless who had the strength to destroy the world. They were even more popular. For example, why was Koju so popular in the original work? The fundamental reason was his identity as a true ancestor. If he was an ordinary person, no one would care about him. Shoo, lower your voice. If you're found out, how can I, the first princess, put my face? La Freya glared at Hanban Sayaka reproachfully, hinting her not to talk too much. Dustless was sweating profusely after the big battle during the day, and his body reeked of sweat. As soon as he got home, he wanted to take a bath without even eating dinner. La Freya peeked at Dustless through the gap of the door. Really? You still know that you are a princess? Do you look like a princess now? Hanban Sayaka smiled bitterly in bewilderment. As a princess, it's fine if you peeked at someone taking a bath, but you actually took pictures in secret? Where's your moral integrity? But speaking of which, where's Azure Wing? I remember she was still here just now, but she didn't come home either. Hanban Sayaka looked around and suddenly found that Azure Wing was missing. She couldn't help but frown. I say, in the bathroom, Dustless frowned as he stared at the woman in front of him. She was tall and slender, and some parts of her body were very well distributed. The parts that should be protruding were very prominent, and the parts that should be perky were very conspicuous. Her golden hair was like the waves of the sea, casually hanging by her waist. Her clear eyes were very direct and had an indescribable wild beauty. Miss Azurewing, is it appropriate for you to watch me take a bath like this? Azurewing put her hands on her hips and stared at Dustless, not caring about her naked body at all. She was very different from the usually shy Azurewing, and her eyes were very open and natural. In my eyes, it's just skin. Of course, if you think it's unfair or you're at a disadvantage, I can also take off my clothes and we can see each other naked. This tone doesn't sound like Azurewing and the way she addressed me. Could it be that strange consciousness that entered Azurewing's body before? Hearing this strange address, Dustless frowned. He carefully stared at Azurewing and asked tentatively, "Are you that alchemist Nina Yadalak?" Chapter 1582. Cough, 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 cough. Dustless felt awkward as he looked at Azure Feather, who was about to take off her clothes. He coughed a few times to stop her as he cursed her for being shameless. After all, it was Nina Yadillard who was in Azure Feather's body and not her own consciousness. Dustless was also not interested in her 2 lumps of flesh. If you think it's unfair for me to watch you bathe, then it's fair for me to take off my clothes for you to see, Nina Yadillard said proudly as she took off her clothes. However, after so many years, there are still people who know my name. Looks like I'm famous now. That's enough. Seeing that this guy was about to show his sincerity, Wu Chun hurriedly climbed out of the bathtub. Ignoring his wet body, he directly put on his pajamas and stopped him in a bad mood. You have to be honest. Also, please understand that your body now belongs to Miss Lanyu. If you want to take it off yourself and not someone else's. That's true. Nina Yadillard was stunned as she scratched her head awkwardly. Thank you for reminding me. Otherwise, I would have forgotten all about it. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he rubbed his nose helplessly. If you have anything to say, just say it. When you turned into a red liquid and entered Azure Feather's body, I noticed it. I didn't do anything to you because I didn't think you had any ill intentions. At the same time, I hope you won't do anything stupid. Otherwise, I will kick you out of her body. Of course, Nina Yadillard felt that Dustless's words were harsh, but she wasn't angry. She knew that Dustless was telling the truth. Back then, she had been hiding in Asakash's body. She had witnessed with her own eyes how Asakash had crushed Vatler. The entire process had been a one-sided slaughter, a one-sided battle filled with malice. I didn't have a choice. Trying to lower her voice, Nina Yadillard said with a headache, "You know that Tenzuka Gong took the sage's spiritual blood. His goal is to revive the sage. Although the sage is not as terrifying as Vatler. He is still a troublesome character. What do you plan to do? Dustless asked calmly. I hope to borrow your strength to defeat him. Seeing that Dustless was not angry, Nina Yadalak relaxed and said, To tell you the truth, Tenzuka Gong was one of my former apprentices. I know what kind of person he is. That kind of crazy guy can do anything. You don't want him to hurt your friend, do you? If you just want me to kill Tenzuka Gong, I can promise you. Dustless was surprisingly easy to talk to. He snorted coldly and said, If it wasn't for Vatler's interference and Tenzuka Gong's long legs and fast-running speed, I would have crippled that eyesore long ago. That's for the best. Nina Yadalak's heart calmed down when she heard that. She said apologetically, I didn't expect to cause so much trouble to my descendants after being dead for so many years. I'm really sorry. It's not your fault. Dustless waved his hand, indicating that she did not need to be apologetic. He was quite satisfied with Nina Yadalak's attitude. Anyway, he hated and disliked Tenzuka Gong. The next time they met, he could just kill him. It was not a problem. I heard that Shelley and Cannon are going to participate in the research in a few days. This is the best opportunity. Tenzuka Gong will definitely come when he hears about it. Dustless's words revealed a strong murderous intent. You, Nina raised her eyebrows and was speechless. Are you going to use them as bait? If there is an accident, the consequences will be unimaginable. I advise you to think twice before you act. Accident? Dustless curled his lips disapprovingly. Then he chuckled and said, Life is only beautiful when it is full of surprises. If everything goes as expected, what fun is there? Time flew. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. At the port, the cruise ship slowly sailed out of the port. Then it gradually sped up. It gradually lost its texture and turned into a tiny black. Such a crazy plan is really suitable for you. Nangong Natsuki held a black umbrella elegantly. The young man in casual clothes next to her was Dustless. What are you afraid of? I left the warlocks of the Flying Thunder God with them. If Shelley and Cannon are in danger, I can show up at any time to help them. Dustless explained calmly. You can persuade them to be bait. You're very advanced in deceiving women. Nangong Natsuki nodded like a chick pecking at rice. She seemed to admire Dustless's methods. She even gave him a thumbs up. However, Dustless knew it was derogatory. Don't worry. That clown will definitely die in the Tiantong tribute this time. That idiot doesn't know what's good for him. He managed to escape 3 or 4 times. That brat is lucky. But where can he run to in the sea? Dustless sneered. He had already sentenced Tenzuka Gong to death in his mind. Jijua, Shelley, and Cannon were just bait. His goal was to lure Tenzuka Gong, the idiot, to take the bait. There were hundreds of thousands of people on Itagami Island. It would be difficult to find Tenzuka Gong among the sea of people. Therefore, Dustless wanted to use this opportunity to lure Tenzuka Gong. Tenzuka Gong couldn't wait to revive the sage, so he would use this opportunity to ambush Shelley and Cannon. Dustless could also get rid of this hidden rat in one fell swoop. Chapter 1583. His resolute eyes were full of coldness. Wu Chun quietly stared at the cruise ship in the distance. His eyes were full of calmness. To be honest, perhaps because he was overconfident, he was not worried at all. Even if there was an accident, he could still use the outer path, reincarnation technique, to revive himself. Maybe that's why he was so confident. No matter what, Dustless was in an invincible position. Speaking of which, our Special Regions Police Force was attacked a few days ago, and we lost something important. Natsuki seemed to have thought of something and reminded, the submarine was stolen. Is that so? Hearing that, Wu Chun just responded faintly. Then he turned around and left leisurely as if everything had nothing to do with him. However, the moment he turned around, a raging red light flashed in his eyes. If I'm not wrong, it should be Amatsuka Gong's doing. Wu Chun left while muttering something. Wu Chun's lips curled into a smile as if he had succeeded in his plot. Ha! That damn pervert finally got careless this time. I thought that he would protect those 2 little girls at all times. Finally, I got the chance. Looking at Dustless leaving safely, Amitsuka Gong smiled crazily. He was really unlucky these days. Everything was well prepared. Only with the existence of Wu Chun, Tianzhong Gong did not dare to take half a step into the Thunder Pool. Who let the disparity in strength make him stop at a glance. Now that Dustless was finally angry with Jijua Shelley and Hane's cannon, Amitsuka Gong was very excited. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The golden skull in his hand glowed brightly, as if urging Amitsuka Gong to hurry up. Don't rush me. I will take a boat and follow them. I hope you will keep your promise then. Amitsuka Gong's face twisted with excitement. He sneaked out of the port and sneaked into the place where he hid the submarine. Will that guy really come? Looking at the white clouds in the sky and the warm sunlight, Hane's cannon closed her eyes and stared at the ocean in the distance. She seemed to be looking for Amitsuka Gong. It should be. Seniors, Dustless's predictions are rarely wrong. Jijua Shelley nodded slightly. She was carrying a black bag, which contained the snow cloud wolf. Let's go eat first. Jijua Shelley chuckled. After finding that there was nothing unexpected, she dragged Kanan to have lunch with her. However, the peaceful atmosphere did not last long, as an accident soon occurred. Boom, boom, boom. The cruise ship suddenly shook violently, followed by a huge explosion. Bang! Jijua Shelley and Hane's cannon were caught off guard. Jijua Shelley was fine. After all, she was a cultivator, but Hane's cannon was different. Her legs immediately turned red and swollen, and she could no longer move. Who did it? Jijua Shelley scanned the surrounding area with her eyes, like tide water. However, to her disappointment, there was nothing above the sea. Nothing had attacked them. The threat is coming from underwater, Hane's cannon guessed. Aye, that white-haired kid suddenly became so smart. What a surprise. An arrogant voice came from the sky, and a man wearing a white shirt and a checkered hat entered their sight. It was Amitsuka Gong, whose face was twisted with malice. It took me a lot of effort to hunt you two little kittens. Compensate me with your lives, and I will forgive your crimes. Amitsuka Gong laughed maniacally. Where did this guy come from? Jijua Shelley looked at the bottom of the ship and saw an army green submarine. She immediately understood what was going on, and her delicate face became colder. You attacked us with a torpedo from a submarine, and you don't care about the lives of others. You are indeed a lunatic, Jijua Shelley said in an unfriendly tone. She had already taken out the snow cloud wolf. Do researchers carry weapons? Sword wizard, you are so careful. Amitsuka Gong looked at the snow cloud wolf and frowned. He was surprised by Jijua Shelley's action. That's because an indifferent voice resounded in the sky. Amitsuka Gong heard the voice that he didn't want to hear the most. His proud old face suddenly turned green, then blue, then white. It was very interesting. Although it is a scientific research, it is normal for accidents to happen. To deal with a clown like you, I asked her to wear it secretly. Do you understand now? I've been waiting for you. Dow Breaker number 90, Black Coffin. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The black light from the sky was cruel and merciless, and it directly crushed Amitsuka Gong. Although he realized the danger and tried to dodge, he was still inevitably torn into pieces by the number 90 Dow Breaker. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Tianzhong Gong's body was instantly torn apart, turning into a pile of scrap metal. It was very miserable. It was cut into pieces by the black blade, as miserable as tofu. Idiot, I only let you steal the submarine on purpose. Do you really think you're so smart that you're an unparalleled genius in scheming? By the way, this so-called scientific research, I'm sure you understand now. It's just a trap to lure you into it. You think your plan has succeeded. Tell me, are you a pig? Hearing what Dustless said, Amitsuka Gong was stunned. He stared at Dustless, who was beaming with joy, and couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Cough, cough, sorry, there was a power outage at home today. Chapter 1584. This kid has a good body. Lin Fan stared at Amitsuka Gong. It was too hard for this guy to be his enemy. With Dustless's current power level, Amatsuka Gong wouldn't be able to compete with Dustless even if he was 100 years weaker. However, everyone had their own unique way of living. Perhaps Amatsuka Gong's unique ability to recover after being smashed was his unique ability. Just barely. Dustless gave a decent answer. Looking at Wu Chun, who was so close to him, Tenzuka Gong's eyes were about to crack. His eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. The majestic killing intent that he had accumulated spread out like a tide. So this is all part of your plan? Trying to lure me out? Amatsuka Gong tried his best to suppress the anger in his heart. His face looked like he was constipated. No wonder his right eye kept twitching these days. Dustless had tricked him. That's right. There are so many people on Itagami Island. It's not easy to find someone. Dustless told him the truth. Looking at Amatsuka Gong's pale face, Lin Fan was happy. This fat rat had been hiding for so long, and now he was willing to come out and die. You want to kill me? Not so fast. With a ruthless determination in his eyes, Tenzuka Gong turned his gaze to the others. There was no other way. Dustless, this cheating player, was too terrifying as an enemy. He could only win by attacking others. Unavoidably, his gaze landed on GMO Shelley and Yisei Xia in the end. Although GMO Shelley was also very strong, but compared to Dustless, if this guy could be an enemy, he would be too cute. Although GMO Shelley was also a thorny rose, but to Tenzuka Gong, it was no different from spring. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Amatsuka Gong gathered explosive power under his feet and dove towards GMO Shelley. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. His speed was so fast that it was like a gust of wind. One could only see the tail, but not the head of the dragon. Die! His hand condensed into a huge metal blade, and his twisted face looked extremely scary. When he was a few meters away from Jijua Shelley, Gong Tenzuka suddenly leaped up and chopped towards Kanase Natsuya with his shiny blade. What a despicable fellow. Jijua Shelley was infuriated. She did not expect Tenzuka Gong to be so despicable. He had purposely attacked her, but his real target was Kanase Cannon, who was so weak. What worried Jijua Shelley the most was that Amatsuka Gong had attacked too quickly, and she did not have the time to help Cannon. Cannon was about to be captured by Amatsuka Gong. The world is degenerating day by day. If I remember correctly, you're just an artificial life form. Seriously, you're obviously created by humans, but you're playing tricks in front of humans. What a joke! A light voice came. Dustless glanced at him coldly. With a thought, Tenzuka Gong's body suddenly went out of control. Damn it! Tenzuka Gong was furious. Kanase Cannon was right in front of him, but he could not move an inch. A strong gravitational force made him unable to resist. Wanxiang Heaven's Pull. With a slight push, Tenzuka Gong's body flew over. Heaven's Cloud Sword. At the same time, a golden light flashed in Dustless's hand, and a straight sword was formed in an instant. Staring at Tenzuka Gong's head, Dustless raised his blade and hacked down mercilessly. Poochie! Tenzuka Gong's head was chopped off by the blade. However, the split body turned into liquid metal and reassembled under the shocked gazes of Jijua Shelley and Kanase Cannon. Tenzuka Gong, who was killed by Dustless, was restored to his original state. What kind of monster is this guy? Jijua Shelley was shocked. Such a heaven-defying skill meant that he had an immortal body. Hee. Tenzuka Gong laughed viciously. I am a perfect life form. You want to kill me? You can only dream about it. Idiot! Hearing him, Dustless curled his lip disdainfully and said sarcastically, Your dream is to become a human being, right? No, not a human being. In your mind, you are a human being, right? Of course. Tenzuka Gong nodded proudly. As long as I bring Sage back to life, he will give me back the other half of his body, and I will be a human being again. Idiot! Dustless sneered again when he heard that and said, Could it be that you haven't noticed it yourself? Your ability is not human. After all, you are just an artificial life form. You can never become a human being. Bullsh *T. Tenzuka Gong was enraged. His heart was hurt, and he looked especially ferocious. He yelled hysterically, As long as I bring Sage back to life, he will give me back the other half of his body. Forget it. There is no point in talking nonsense. Let's finish you." Dustless stared at Tenzuka Gong's body, and his eyes suddenly turned cold. "Finish me?" Tenzuka Gong murmured. He looked at Dustless with disdain, and looked at Dustless with disdain as well. It was not that he was confident. Even if his body was broken, it could be repaired without limit, which meant that he was almost immortal. Clearing his throat, Gong Amatsuka said loudly, "No one." However, before he could finish, he felt a piercing pain all over his body. A black flame quickly devoured him, and within a second, he was revived. "Tenzo! So hot." A painful voice came out of Tenzuka Gong's body. He was lying on the ground and rolling crazily. His voice was filled with pain, and both his body and mind were severely damaged. Chapter 1585. Gong Tenzuka screamed hysterically, but no one cared about him. Who asked him to be so despicable? He deserved to be burned by Amaterasu. Gong Tenzuka was tossing and turning in the black flames, screaming miserably. Amaterasu will slowly devour. His body separated from his body? Dustless frowned. He noticed that Gong Tenzuka's body had turned into liquid metal. Then, a large amount of liquid was secreted out of his body. His clothes were covered by the black flames. Just like a clone, another Gong Tenzuka was slowly forming. These days, seeing the situation, Dustless sighed lightly, knowing that he failed again. You're just a weak little insect, but your ability is so novel and refined. You're a weirdo, but there's a world of difference between you and ordinary people. Dustless sounded like he was praising Gong Tenzuka, but his tone was full of sarcasm. Hearing this, Tengzhong Gong snorted coldly. In his heart, he knew that Wu Chan was mocking him for being useless in disguise. Taking a closer look, Tenzuo Gong was in an incomparably miserable state. Although he had not died, he had been ravaged to the point that he did not look like a human anymore. His face was completely different, and his entire body was filled with the smell of burnt metal. The pungent smell made people frown and feel extremely uncomfortable. "I will take revenge on you," Gong Tenzuka swore. At the same time, he waved his hand and countless spikes shot out. He knew that it was useless against Dustless, so he decided to attack Kanase instead. She was the weakest among them. Who else could he bully if not Gong Tenzuka? Shoo shoo shoo. Looking at the incoming light, Kanase Cannon's eyes flashed with fear. She subconsciously took a few steps back. After all, she was just an ordinary human. Despicable rat. When Wu Chen saw this, he could not help but be filled with murderous intent. Seeing Tenzuka Gong's smug expression, this brat probably really thought that he could not do anything to him and could only helplessly stare at him. His way of thinking was simply too ignorant. Dustless raised his right arm and aimed his palm at Kanase. He activated his gravitational force and grabbed her. 10,000 heavenly attraction. Clang, 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 clang. All of the Amaterasu tributes' attacks landed on the deck of the ship. Kanase Cannon had already landed behind Dustless and escaped the merciless attacks of the Amaterasu tribute. I'll let you enjoy a move that only super experts can experience. TSK. You're lucky. The one who died the worst by his hands was Vatler. Dustless's eyes were as sharp as a knife, full of hostility. He decisively took out a red Tachi. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The blade was simple and unadorned, and it was filled with an ancient aura. Before the Tachi could erupt with its own deterrent power, an indescribable heat swept through the sky. Bankai Remnant Flame Tachi. Dustless mercilessly unleashed Zanka no Tachi, and a wisp of hot steam immediately emerged from the blade. Then, the moisture in the air instantly disappeared, and the water stains on the sea also began to evaporate at an accelerated rate. Not only that, but everything in the surroundings also began to evaporate into nothingness. What's going on? Amaterasu tribute screamed in horror. He found that his body was gradually shrinking and slowly disappearing. This inexplicable feeling made him break out in cold sweat. He subconsciously looked at Dustless and asked, "Did you do this?" The essence of Zanka no Tachi is 15 million degrees Celsius of spiritual pressure. Do you think you can still survive under 15 million degrees Celsius? Everything will disappear. Damn it, Tenzuka Gong cursed. The moment the heat appeared, his body disappeared without a trace. He was completely vaporized by the horrifying heat. If Dustless did not deliberately avoid the ship, he would also have instantly disappeared into nothingness. Clang, 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 clang. At this moment, a golden skull fell from the sky. It was extremely dazzling, as if it was made of pure gold. "You're the culprit, right?" Dustless stared at the golden skull and asked calmly. Cough, cough, cough. A strange sound came, and the golden skull suddenly flashed with a gorgeous light. Then, a hazy shadow rushed out of the skull, and the dazzling light made everyone close their eyes. Why do you resist the great me? You're just an imperfect life form, and yet you want to resist the perfect me. This is treason, an unforgivable crime. The golden shadow spoke in human language, full of arrogance and arrogance. You call yourself a perfect life form? Ridiculous. You need the help of others to resurrect, and you dare to say that you're perfect? Sure enough, like master, like servant. Amadaraka tribute is a retard, and it's all because of you. Dustless sneered. He knew that the culprit had come to the surface, the sage. Retard. The golden halo twitched a few times and said angrily, "You, a lowly life form, can't understand my greatness at all. Even if this planet is destroyed, without food, oxygen, and water, I can still survive. So that's why you think you're a perfect life form, superior to others?" Dustless heard this and laughed involuntarily. If it was so simple and perfect, then he had encountered countless perfect life forms, and he was one of them. Without food, oxygen, and water, it was just a trivial matter for him. It's useless to explain my greatness to a lowly life form like you. You will never understand. The sage was too lazy to talk nonsense. His body, which was just a shadow, turned from nothingness to reality and became a dazzling golden body. If I sell it, it must be worth a lot of money. Looking at that dazzling golden body, Dustless's subconscious words made the sage's head swell. Chapter 1586. Blasphemy, blasphemy, blasphemy. This is blasphemy to the great me. The golden sage was furious. He didn't expect Dustless to be so arrogant and audacious. Looking at Dustless's eyes, the golden sage's hair stood on end. He could read something else from those eyes. If he sold it, it would be worth a lot of money. "You damned bastard, I'm going to kill you." The sage opened his mouth full of fangs and roared. A dazzling and destructive beam of light was formed in an instant. "You two, stay away." Dustless turned his head and glanced at Jijwasheli and Canon Hanes. "That beam of light is useless against me, but you two might still be severely injured." "Understood." The two women nodded wisely. Then they turned around and left. They ran to a relatively safe place to hide. Boom, boom, boom. The beam of light expanded to its limit and covered Dustless. His whole body turned silver and shone so brightly that no one dared to look at him directly. "Bring it on." Dustless crooked his finger. There was no fear on his face. Instead, there was provocation. He stared at the sage as if he was looking at a street rat. He didn't even try to hide the mockery in his eyes. "Die." The sage was furious. He opened his mouth and released a powerful attack. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Thick beams of light fell from the sky towards Dustless, who was on the deck. The size of the beam was so exaggerated that the void shook slightly, as if it could collapse at any time. Ha ha ha! The sage's mouth was full of fangs. He laughed, as if victory was within his grasp. "This beam of light is powerful enough to flatten a mountain. I know you are strong, but if you are hit by it, you will die for sure. Ha ha, and you will never dodge it. The sage laughed arrogantly, as if he had seen through Dustless's thoughts. However, his laughter, which was similar to the sound of metal colliding, was really unflattering. This gold twinkle is very smart. Dustless stared at Sage in surprise. If he dodged, the beam would hit the entire ship, and all the students' Kinace cannon and Jijua Shelley would fall into the water. Then let's just blast it away. Dustless raised his fist as he looked up at the blinding light that was charging towards him. Oomph. Do you think your fists are made of iron? A sneer came from the sage's throat. Not only was the power of the falling light beam astonishing, but it also carried a scorching attack. If one touched it with their bare hands, their entire arm could be burned off at any time. Just because you can't do it doesn't mean that others can't. Dustless's eyes slightly solidified, staring at the light falling down, whispering softly, "Armament hockey hardening." Boom, boom, boom. Then Dustless decisively punched out at the right time. Bang, bang, bang. The falling light beam was stopped in an instant. All the light was blocked by Dustless's fist, and he himself was motionless, and there was no discomfort on his handsome cheeks. Gulp! Sage was shocked and choked for a moment. Looking at the light that was caught by Dustless, he was shocked and said, "Is this guy's fist really made of iron? Go back to where you came from." Glancing coldly at Sage, Dustless's right fist exerted a little force, and the stalemate light instantly collapsed and flew straight toward Sage's head. "It's back." Sage's mouth twitched when he saw this. He increased the horsepower of his legs and planned to escape, but it was too late. Dustless used an even more powerful force to fight back the light. Boom, 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 boom. Sage's body was swallowed by the light and immediately burst like a rainstorm, and the ground was full of dark red liquid. "You can come out now." At the same time, Dustless suddenly took out a miniature doll, which was Nina Yadilak's original body. She quickly rushed into the liquid and quickly absorbed it. "Damn it, I'm perfect, and I can't lose to a flawed human." Sage's golden body was shattered by his own move, but he also had the ability to repair it infinitely. His sharp golden eyes were gloomy, and his body turned red. He was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. "Go to hell." Then a blue energy ball popped out, and Dustless said coldly, "Wong Su's flash." Boom, boom, boom. Sage's body, which had just recovered, was destroyed again by Dustless's finger, and the golden light scattered over the blue sea. The person who made you is not bad. On the sea surface, the broken pieces of Sage gathered again, and then, under Dustless's gaze, they finally merged into one, and Sage emerged from the water again, safe and sound. "Although I can't kill you, but..." At this point, Sage's gloomy smile became strange. "Similarly, it seems that you can't kill me either. However, if you continue to exhaust me like this, you'll be the unlucky one. I forgot to tell you before, my stamina is also unlimited." The sage proudly narrated and proudly raised his disgusting head. "Idiot." Dustless shook his head speechlessly and said sarcastically, "When you say this, at least look at the situation under your feet, or I'll be very troubled." "Under my feet?" Sage was stunned when he heard this, and looked at Dustless in confusion. Then he lowered his head subconsciously, and his huge eyes suddenly froze, and a very bad feeling swept across his heart. Chapter 1587. What the hell is this? The sage roared in shock, his voice full of fear. He was shocked to find that below him was a black hole similar to the abyss of the universe. He did not know how deep it was, but the sage knew that if he fell in, he would not be able to get out. "I must not be swallowed by this thing. As a perfect being, how can I be swallowed so easily? Absolutely not. I cannot tolerate this situation." The sage struggled with all his might as he roared like a madman. His golden eyes revealed a trace of fear that penetrated deep into his soul. As a perfect being, how could he die? Absolutely not. "Idiot, when did I say I was going to swallow you? You still have some value." Dustless laughed and said, "The reason you can still talk like a lunatic is because of my mercy. Otherwise, with the power of God's might and my eye power, you would have already drifted to the abyss of the universe. You still want me to thank you for your kindness? Sage asked angrily. At the same time, he felt that the black hole's gravitational force was much weaker, and he could move his body freely. Of course not. Shaking his finger, Dustless said coldly. Even so, you still have to die, but in a different way. In any case, it could be considered as me reusing trash. Reusing trash? Sage's golden mouth twitched, and he shouted, "The trash you were talking about is me? This is blasphemy." Swish, swish, swish. The sage opened his mouth and shot out a powerful ray of light. The silver ray of light went straight for Dustless's face. Boom, boom, boom. The thick light covered Dustless's eyes. In his anger, Sage increased the power of this move to the limit. It was even bigger and looked unavoidable. This kind of trash move again? Out of boredom, Wu Chun raised his arm again. Disappear for me. Bang, bang, bang. Dustless slapped down lightly, and the light that was rushing over was sent flying by Dustless. Just like before, it changed its trajectory. Damn you. Sage's eyes widened, and he sadly found that his move was flying toward him again. Boom, boom, boom. Sage was both angry and helpless. Faced with his own attack, he was helpless as well. His entire body was blown to smithereens, turning into a pool of fresh red blood. You can absorb him now. Dustless glanced at the pocket-sized figure and said casually. This person was Nina Yedillard. The red liquid on the ground was nourishment for her. Thank you. Nina Yadilak glanced at Dustless gratefully before diving into the red liquid like a fish in water. Her originally pocket-sized body also became slightly larger. With this cycle, she would soon be able to return to her normal appearance. No wonder you didn't kill me. Staring at the gradually growing Nina Yadilad, Sage understood Dustless's evil intentions. This guy was not being merciful. He wanted to squeeze this woman dry. Don't even think about it. The sage roared. An array of light shot towards Nina Yadilad. Isn't it better to just disappear obediently? Why do you have to resist? Dustless shook his head as he turned into a flash of light and appeared in front of Nina Yedillard. Dow Breaker 88, Flying Dragon Strikes the Thief. A thicker flash of light shot out. Due to the angle, the two beams of light inevitably intertwined. Tear him apart. Looking at the light in Dustless's hand, Sage roared. The light beam shattered in the end, but why can't the perfect me be better than him? The sage gloomily muttered to himself. One of them had been torn apart, but that miserable person wasn't Dustless. It was the perfect him. Boom, boom, boom. The body that had been repaired several times exploded again, turning into a pool of dark red liquid. As time passed, Nina Yedillard gradually recovered. On the other hand, Sage shrunk as he was continuously absorbed. The majestic sage sadly became a worm, and Dustless used God's might to devour him, and that was the end of Sage's life. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. How boring. Dustless lazily hugged his head as he looked at the distant city through the transparent window of his apartment. He watched TV to pass the time. Akatsuki Koju is dead, Vatler is dead, and the first primogenitor's War King domain has been swept away. All his enemies have been eliminated by Dustless, so naturally, he was bored. This kind of lazy life is quite comfortable, but as time goes on, it is inevitable that he will get bored. Bang! At that moment, there was a sudden explosion. A gust of cold wind invaded the warm room. Dustless looked at the source of the sound and saw Natsuki Minamiya. What's the result? Dustless asked curiously. They all agreed and are willing to obey your orders. Even the Lion King organization has chosen to submit to you. Natsuki gave Dustless a satisfactory answer. The entire Itagami Island is willing to break away from the Japanese government. TSK, TSK, I didn't expect you to be so popular. Those stubborn bastards are willing to follow your orders. They are treating you like a king. Just a day ago, Wu Chun requested for Itagami Island to become independent and cut off all ties with Japan. Wu Chun thought that the Lion King organization would be against it, but who would have thought that they would agree to it? Treating me like a king? Bullshit. They are afraid of being destroyed by me. Dustless sneered. Just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, Nangong Natsuki's sudden words stunned him. Chapter 1588. Let's go on a date, Dustless. Nangong Natsuyu said seriously with narrowed eyes. Date? Dustless pondered over this word for a moment. He was stunned for a few seconds before he caught the faint smile on Natsuki's face. He quickly realized that this was a trap. I refuse. Dustless glanced at Natsuki with a don't try to fool me expression. Why would Natsuki want to go on a date with him? Dustless shook his head. The probability was 0. She was not a love-struck fool. She must be plotting something if she wanted to go on a date with him. Are you not a man? Natsuki was stunned for a moment before she became angry. She had already given him enough face by asking him on a date. She did not expect him to refuse. Am I a man or not? Are you sure you want to prove it? Dustless blinked innocently and asked. He then began to take off his clothes. Bastard, what are you doing? Natsuki was shocked. She quickly turned her back to Dustless. Put your clothes on the boat. Dustless laughed dryly. He shrugged and said helplessly, You asked me if I am a man or not. I will take off my clothes to prove it to you. You. Natsuki was furious. She angrily stomped her feet. She turned her head and stared at Dustless. Her eyes were filled with tears. Is there something wrong with Natsuki's head? Seeing this scene, Dustless's face was filled with a strange expression. Looking at the sobbing Nangong Natsu, he felt as if his worldview had collapsed. Nangong Natsu, this strong woman, was crying? This joke was not funny at all. Cough, cough, cough. Sorry, I was rude just now. I agreed to go on a date with you. Wu Chun finally compromised. He glanced at Nangong Nayu and frowned. At the same time, he wrinkled his nose. He smelled a scent from Nangong Nayu that he had never smelled before. Strange. Why does she have my scent on her? Staring at Nangong Natsuki, Wu Chun's expression became even more strange. He stared at the girl's dark eyes. They were like the abyss of the universe that attracted his attention. Hey, let's go. Hearing that Wu Chun agreed to go on a date, Nangong Nayu's face immediately lit up with joy. She quickly pulled Wu Chun's arm and skipped away. She was completely different from the usual Nangong Nayu, who was inflexible and calm. Really? Are you kidding me? I still want to sleep a little longer. Yawning tiredly, Wu Chun could only change his clothes and go out to play with her. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Inside the elevator, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he stared at Nangong Natsu. She was like a completely different person. Her personality was the opposite of her usual self. She gave off the feeling of a moody witch. Miss Natsuki, where do you want to go? Looking at the scorching sun on the street, Dustless was dispirited. He wanted to take an afternoon nap under the scorching sun, not to mention going shopping with Natsuki. Let's just walk around. Grabbing Dustless's arm, the girl skipped away. She was extremely happy. But before she could take 2 steps, she was blocked by some ignorant people. Hey, Gigolo, let go of my hand. Let me do it. A few figures suddenly appeared from a nearby alley. They reeked of alcohol and made people want to vomit. They had bracelets that represented the demon race. Their strength was definitely not ordinary. If you get out of my way, I can pretend that nothing happened. Dustless expressionlessly glanced at them. He was not interested in these small fries. But Natsuki's stubborn temper flared up. Get down here and kowtow to admit your mistake. Natsuki's face darkened as she coldly warned. Even her eyes were filled with a red light. Otherwise, you will regret it. When did this girl become so arrogant? Dustless stared at Natsuki in astonishment. He chose to remain silent and watch the show. Little girl, are you looking for death? You look quite pretty. Apologize to me, and I will let bygones be bygones. The hooligan who suddenly appeared stared at Natsuki's delicate face. His hand was already reaching out to grab her. You're looking for death. Natsuki lifted her small foot and swept it out. The hooligan was sent flying. The force behind the kick was extremely ferocious. Ka 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 sounds could be heard. His bones were definitely broken. You broke his bones with a kick? That brat is a demon race. His physique is stronger than normal humans. Natsuki is not a melee fighter. But Dustless was stunned. Bastard, you dare to hit our boss? Everyone, let's teach him a lesson. Several hoodlums were furious. They took out steel pipes, iron rods, and other things and rushed over. They all smashed towards Nangong Nayu. You guys can kill each other. Natsuki coldly said. She blinked her eyes, and the hooligans started to beat each other. Let's go, Chunkoin. Natsuki pulled Dustless's hand to leave, but she found that she couldn't pull him away. She turned her head and looked at him in confusion. Dustless was as cold as ice. Mississippi. Although I don't know what happened, you're not Natsuki. The taijutsu you used to break that hooligan's bones was armament hockey. Secondly, it should be jinjutsu that controlled them to fight each other. Although I don't know how you did it, I clearly felt the fluctuation of chakra. Please give me a reasonable explanation. Dustless coldly stared at Natsuki. No wonder this girl felt strange. She was completely different from the usual Natsuki. It turned out that she was an imposter. Sure enough, I was seen through. Natsuki shrugged helplessly. Her tone was somewhat mocking. This girl. Wu Chen's mouth twitched. He glared at Nangong Nayu. Her tone was the same as his, tangled. Chapter 1589. The young girl's eyes were filled with ridicule, and a trace of teasing flowed within them. Her cute and exquisite face was suffused with 2 faint blushes, and she was extremely beautiful. In this world, chakra and armament hockey are exclusive to me, and no one has any reason to learn them. So why do you know how to use them? Speaking of this, Dustless paused and said, So please tell me your identity and origin. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to escape from my hands. Phew! As his voice fell, Dustless grabbed the girl's white arm. Let me go. The girl's face was stiff, and her angry look was quite cute and charming. Crystal tears squeezed out of her eyes again, and she looked like she was about to cry. Humph! But this time it obviously didn't work. Dustless just snorted and chose to turn a blind eye. His face was firm, and he wasn't confused by her at all. At the same time, Dustless began to think about the origin of the girl. Koju, that guy seems to have a similar experience as me. Dustless suddenly thought of Koju. Koju's daughter, Koju, also tricked him like this. Could it be, as if he understood something, Dustless's face twitched fiercely, and his calm eyes rolled up stormy waves, and he stared at the girl's eyes in disbelief. This kind of thing can be followed. Koju's daughter ran from the future to the present. If this is the case, it can also perfectly explain the origin of the girl's chakra and armament hockey. After all, Dustless is the only one on this planet who knows armament hockey and chakra, so the identity of the girl is actually on the verge of being revealed. You finally understand. The girl showed an unhappy expression. She seemed to be very dissatisfied that Dustless guessed her identity. Cough. I'm sorry. Dustless blushed, and he let go of the girl's hand and asked awkwardly, What's your name? My name is Natsuki. The girl who looked exactly like Natsuki replied. Good name. Dustless nodded slightly upon hearing this. His previous gloomy mood was swept away. He stared at the girl's crystalline pupils, and after hesitating for a while, he asked expectantly, Your father. Is it me? When he said this, Dustless looked depressed. After all, he hadn't made any progress with Natsuki Nangong, and they hadn't reached the point of having a child yet. However, Dustless had no choice but to think in that direction due to the strange girl in front of him. Take a guess. The girl named Moonless revealed a sly smile. Let me guess. Dustless rolled his eyes and said angrily, Although I don't know how you did it, but I am the only person on this planet who has chakra, and armament hockey is also the same. The answer is obvious, and you and Natsuki look exactly the same. Dustless's face twitched as he sighed inwardly at the impermanence of the world. Tell me, why are you looking for me? My future daughter. Dustless put on a different face, which was completely different from the shameless expression just now. Huh, daughter? The girl blinked her eyes and said sarcastically, Then I want to ask this father, a father who takes off his clothes in front of his daughter and asks his daughter to verify whether he is a man or not. This kind of guy should go to hell. Dustless opened his mouth and found that he was speechless, and his face was red with shame. Knowing that the girl was indirectly insulting him, he quickly waved his hand to cover up. You don't know. You have to understand that the father didn't do it on purpose. You have to understand him. I'll let you go this time. The girl with delicate appearance put her hands on her hips and then looked directly at Dustless's eyes, thinking, It's really disappointing. It's a bit different from what I imagined. Then what did you imagine me to be like? Dustless calmly asked, and at the same time his brows were slightly wrinkled, and his eyes were looking at the distant sky, and there was a flash of anger in his eyes. He could feel an evil aura of disaster coming at him at high speed. At least I won't be a strange uncle who takes off his clothes in front of his daughter. The girl's face was very serious. Poochie. Dustless vomited blood and glared at her. It seemed that this girl still couldn't get over this and was still thinking about such a trivial matter. But, to be honest, I'm also very surprised. Staring at the girl's delicate face, Dustless shook his head lightly. Her height and appearance were almost the same as Natsuki Nangong, so it was no wonder that he recognized her wrongly. In fact, if she didn't use chakra, Dustless would still think that this girl was Natsuki Nangong. Roar, 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 roar. At this moment, in the depths of the blue void, a hysterical roar suddenly sounded. Looking up, it was a ferocious-looking, evil dragon. Of course, it could also turn into a flying lizard. Is that why you're here? Pointing at the evil dragon in the depths of the void, Dustless stroked his chin and said proudly, Since you can inherit my chakra, you can't be weak. You shouldn't be so weak that you can't even deal with a dragon. Dustless only glanced at the evil dragon and then ignored it. There was nothing special about it, and there was nothing worthy of his attention. Of course, there are other things. The girl's face turned serious. You too. At this moment, an untimely voice suddenly sounded. Dustless turned his head and saw a girl dressed in gothic lowly clothing. Although she was young, her aura was very strong, and there was an inexplicable majesty about her. Yo, Natsuki. Dustless waved his hand in greeting. He knew that this was the real Natsuki Nangong, and the girl just now was just an imposter. Or rather, she was the daughter of Dustless and Natsuki Nangong, although her arrival was a bit strange. Chapter 1590. Nangong Natua looked at herself, who looked exactly the same as her. Her expression was one of shock. Her delicate little face was filled with astonishment. She was also extremely shocked by the young lady in front of her. You are, however, in some aspects, Natsuki was much more flexible than Dustless. She stared at the girl, and after a while, a wisp of wisdom flashed in her eyes. She seemed to have seen through the girl's identity, and then she fell silent. Cough, cough, cough. Seeing the three of them fall silent, Dustless had no choice but to stand up and cough twice. There was nothing he could do about it. It was inevitable that men would suffer losses sometimes. Roar, 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 roar. Deep in the sky, a ferocious-looking dragon descended from the sky. Its appearance was quite ferocious, and its eyes were filled with killing intent. There was even saliva dripping from its mouth. Even if you overestimate yourself, you should know when to stop. The young girl coldly raised her right hand. Her pale palm contained a trace of destructive power. At the same time, her black eyes that were as deep as onyx also showed a drastic change. A pair of mysterious blue and white eyes appeared in the girl's eyes. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise, and he muttered to himself, How surprising! It seems that she inherited the Tensigan from me. Boom, boom, boom. The turbulent repulsive force erupted at full speed, and the explosive impact hit the dragon that was fluttering its wings in the void. Roar, 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 roar. Under the violent impact, the dragon howled in extreme pain and was blasted back dozens of meters. There was a clear dent in its abdomen, and scarlet blood flowed out of its mouth. This attack forced the dragon to retreat again and again. "How is the future me? Don't tell me I'm dead," Dustless asked expectantly. After all, Akatsuki Koju's daughter, Akatsuki Koju, came from the future, and at that time, Akatsuki Koju also died because of the same annihilation. "Future? You just destroyed this planet." The girl flicked her beautiful black hair and gave an answer that made Natsuki speechless. As expected, it was a mistake to let you live. Natsuki glared at Dustless. There was a hint of blame between her brows, and she was also quite conflicted. She looked at the girl who looked exactly like her with a strange expression. Natsuki felt the connection between their bloodlines, and the technique she used was Dustless's. It was obvious what it meant. Thinking of this, Natsuki's face was filled with embarrassment and a rare shyness. Destroying a planet, Dustless pondered. Natsuki's words, but in his eyes, it was normal. After all, this wasn't the only planet that he destroyed. Roar, 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 roar. Of Natsuki, 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 and Natsuki, Natsuki. Moreover, it opened its mouth and spat out thick flames at Wu Chun and the others. Boom, 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 boom. Natsuki, Natsuki, Natsuki. Of Natsuki, 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 and Natsuki, 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 Natsuki. Really? Dustless sighed in the midst of the flames. The golden light was especially dazzling under the cover of the flames. It was golden and resplendent, emitting a holy and warm light. Kinsusunu? The girl said the name of the technique. She was very familiar with it. Disappear. Dustless raised his head to look at the sky and indifferently glanced at the black, evil dragon. Then his eye energy spun rapidly. A strand of black flame instantly consumed the black, evil dragon. Tenso. The giant dragon's huge, fat body was instantly annihilated by the flames. It was pulled into the boundless sea of fire, and the black netherworld fire swallowed it up along with its bones. Ayo, ayo, ayo. The evil dragon screamed in pain until it finally choked and disappeared. As expected of my dad. Seeing this, the girl gave Dustless a thumbs up. Her face was full of praise and a smile, as if she was saying, "I'm not as good as you. This little girl can't be an imposter, right?" Dustless was speechless. He subconsciously looked at Nangong Natsuki. She also had an expression that said, "This has nothing to do with me." However, this girl who looked exactly like Nangong Natsuki had a normal expression. "I have something to tell you." At this moment, the girl suddenly moved closer to Dustless and said, "If you want to leave this world in the future, remember to bring everyone with you." Everyone? Hearing this, Dustless was stunned. He blurted out, "Are you talking about Azure Wing and the others? Who else do you think I'm talking about? You don't seem to know anyone else in this world, right?" The girl rolled her eyes and asked, "This planet will be destroyed in the future. I'm sure you know what this means." Dustless nodded slightly. If the planet was destroyed, it meant that all living things would wither away. Every blade of grass and tree on this planet would vanish completely. That's a must. He nodded resolutely. It would be fine if this planet was safe and sound. If it was destroyed, then he could only bring them away. As for the reason, Dustless didn't ask. There was no decisive future. Everything was changed by human factors. "Aren't you curious about how this planet will be destroyed?" The girl was somewhat depressed. Dustless's reaction to such shocking news was actually mediocre. He was even indifferent. She was quite disappointed. "Who knows?" Dustless shrugged and said, "The future is also unreliable. In fact, the moment you appeared, the future changed. That so-called reason will also change." In the original work, Koju's daughter, Koju, used this method to change the ending of Koju's death. Thus, it didn't matter what the future was like. It would change anyway. My journey in this world is about to come to an end. Looking up at the sky, Dustless's lazy eyes were filled with expectation. Chapter 1591. Inside the System World. The sky was clear and cloudless. White clouds floated lazily in the sky. The green mountains and clear waters were the only real world in this world. Tea is cake, the black-haired young man sighed under the shade of a tree. A woman's thoughts can't be easily guessed. Really, compared to Itagami Island, the System World was more comprehensive. The scenery was more beautiful, and the climate was more suitable for human habitation. At first, Wu-chan thought that if he brought Nangong Na Yu and the others away, they would fiercely object. Wu-chan had even prepared an illusion. However, the world was unpredictable. When the girls heard that they were going to play in another world, they agreed without hesitation. Before leaving, Dustless once again destroyed the world of bloodthirsty frenzy. You are really greedy. Ling Er, the incarnation of the system consciousness, frowned. When he left, Dustless used one of the strongest illusions, the infinite Tsukuyami, to kill the whole world and used the descent of the divine tree world to absorb everyone's vitality. Every time he left, Wu-chan would do this to enhance his strength. Although the means were a bit evil, Wu-chan, who was used to doing bad things, also kept calm. So what? This is a world where the strong prey on the weak. Being weak is a sin. Dustless smiled perfunctorily and said, "Everything ends here. Now, we can change to the next world. This is good too. I can use infinite Tsukuyami and divine tree world descent to absorb the world. My strength will increase too. I hope I can go to a world with a high level of power." Dustless prayed. Linger couldn't control this kind of thing. In fact, it was randomly chosen. Where to go depended entirely on Dustless's personal luck. Kacha! Ling-er's seemingly weak arm gently tore apart the void, and a shocking black hole appeared. No, it was more accurate to say that it was a spatial tunnel. How violent! Wu-chan shook his head and glanced at her calmly. Then, he plunged into the cave. In a strange world, the weather was clear and very hot. However, Wu-chan's first impression was that it was very cold. He subconsciously opened his eyes and saw the world in the water. F***CK. Why is she so good at picking a place? Next time, she might as well put me in lava. Wu-chan opened his mouth and scolded loudly. Suddenly, a large amount of lake water invaded his lungs. He tried to mobilize his strength, but he helplessly discovered that perhaps because he had just crossed over, his body was soft and had no strength at all. Splash! At the same time, a huge wave came from the lake. Dustless looked for the source. An unexpected figure appeared in front of him. She had aqua blue hair and aqua blue eyes. Even her eyebrows were aqua blue. Her fair face was as delicate as mutton fat jade. Her bright eyes were full of vigor as she pounced on Wu-chan. Her figure was exceptionally hot. She was wearing a pure, white, tight-fitting uniform. Her curvaceous figure was particularly eye-catching. "This girl is so familiar," Dustless whispered to himself. He secretly searched for the joy of the person. Suddenly, he thought of an almost identical figure. His body suddenly felt cold. Is death? Bad luck. Why did I meet this evil star? First, I fell into the water. Now, I inexplicably became the prey of this woman. Dustless felt cold. He had goosebumps all over his body. Isdeath was a famous sadist. Her greatest interest was to torture others. Although Dustless had no grudges with her, this girl came to save him inexplicably. It showed that there was an unknown relationship. In short, Dustless was in the sight of his death. "Don't run." There was a faint voice from the bottom of the water. Dustless looked up. It turned out to be his death, who was close at hand. This girl was strong and good at swimming. She caught Dustless almost instantly. She held him in her arms and then rushed to the surface of the water. Although I don't know what happened, I can be sure that she is looking for me for absolutely no good thing. Dustless's expression was full of depression. Just at that moment, he keenly caught the coldness in Isdeath's eyes. Plop! In an instant, Isdeath took Dustless out of the water, jumped to the shore very vigorously, and threw Dustless on the ground. She pointed at Dustless and said, "You want to die before I torture you? Dream on. I still have countless kinds of torture to try. This time, I'll try it on your body." Huh. Hearing this, Dustless was suddenly dumbfounded and asked with a speechless face, that, although I am very grateful to you for saving me, did you get the wrong person? Miss, I don't know you. Dustless was confused by this sudden change. He just crossed into this world and did not offend his death. It was too sad to be a scapegoat for no reason. By the way, there seemed to be a body under the sea just now. The guy looked a little like me. Did his death make a mistake? Dustless bowed his head and thought carefully about the development of the matter. Soon, he found a big problem. He stared at his death speechlessly. It was estimated that this girl had mistaken him for someone else. I saw a person who looked 70% like me at the bottom of the sea. The guy you said may be dead. If you don't believe me, you can have a look. Chapter 1592. However, these words had no effect. Isteth just stared at Dustless coldly. Her cold pupils did not change at all. She just stared at him quietly. More and more coldness and killing intent flowed from her body. Three beasts. After a moment of silence, Isteth called the names of the three subordinates. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Three black shadows appeared behind her in an instant. They were wearing the same clothes, and they all knelt on one knee very respectfully. They looked at Isteth with a look of worship and fanaticism. It was as if they saw God. This guy said that he was not the prince. Torture him well, let him admit it, and then let him die in pain. How dare he say that I mistook him for someone else? Isteth turned her head and left. She sat on the chair prepared in advance and watched quietly. It seemed that Dustless was not qualified for her to do anything. Prince. Dustless heard the words, and his eyes flashed with surprise. After a few seconds of contemplation, he was enlightened. He secretly guessed. I'm afraid that Isteth thought I was the bullshit prince. Unfortunately, that guy is dead. Dustless could be 100% sure that the body in the deepest part of the river was the prince's. He was not the prince, but his appearance was somewhat similar. He was afraid that Isteth had mistaken him for someone else. Your Royal Highness, I'm sorry. This is the order of the minister, who asked you to do the right thing. As a result, the minister was forced to ask Isteth for help and asked us to kill you secretly. You have to understand that we are still fighting with the alien race. For you, Isteth secretly came back. Your Royal Highness really deserves to die. The blonde kid squatted and looked at Dustless. His face was full of ridicule and murderous intent. This guy seems to be called Nyo. Glancing at him faintly, Dustless's mind waned. After a while, his strength had recovered 80 to 90%. Now his whole body was full of strength. Isteth, this guy doesn't seem to be the prince. The silver-haired middle-aged man bowed and respectfully said to Isteth, they wear different clothes and are different in age. I have seen the prince before, and this guy should be two different people. We can barely be considered acquaintances. Dustless glanced at the middle-aged man in surprise. He was also quite familiar with him. This man was called Leva, who used to be Bullet's former boss, the former general of the Empire who was both wise and brave. He was framed and arrested because he refused to bribe. Later, he was rescued by Isteth and had been loyal to her ever since. Is that so? Hearing this, Isteth nodded slightly and looked at Dustless quietly. She asked, did you see other people's bodies under the riverbed? Tell me the exact location, and I'll let you go if you're right. Let me go. Dustless frowned. Isteth seemed to be too proud. Obviously, she caught the wrong person, but she didn't apologize. Now she said that she would let him go. She was too arrogant. I'm sorry. Dustless turned his head and did not look at Isteth. He said loudly, I am forgetful. You are threatening me again. I suddenly forgot the place where the guy died. The tone of this guy's words. The three beasts heard the words, and their mouths were twitching wildly. They stared at Dustless with horrified eyes. Their big eyes seemed to be about to fall out, which gave people a very shocking feeling. The dull eyes were obviously saying, if you want to die, just say it. There is no need to be tortured to death by Isteth. You guy. Not only the three beasts were stunned, but Isteth was also full of astonishment. Her eyes were dull and empty, gray, and lost the shrewd brilliance of the past. Interesting. Isteth, who came back to her senses, had a strange light in her beautiful eyes. She looked at Dustless curiously and asked calmly, "Are you forgetful? Do you need me to help you think?" "Really?" Dustless was surprised when he heard the words. He quickly opened his mouth and pointed to the depths of his throat and said, "If it's possible, thank you very much. I just drank a big mouthful of seawater. Now, please help me suck it all out with artificial respiration. After that, I will take you to find the body of the prince." Ha! After Dustless said this, there was a sound of gnashing teeth. Looking at the source of the sound, what came into view was a ferocious-looking brat. "Neo, what did you say? I didn't hear it clearly. Say it again if you have the guts." Neo was full of anger, and his eyes were fixed on Dustless. His sharp eyes seemed to be looking for a suitable place to cut open Dustless's stomach. Catching the raging coldness in the depths of Neo's eyes, Dustless sneered and shouted, "Are you an idiot? I will let that woman give me artificial respiration and suck the water out of my stomach. If you understand, get out of my way, you little retard. You are looking for death." The golden-haired brat was so irritated that he almost vomited blood. At that moment, he attacked with his immature fist. This weak fist seemed to be extremely fragile, but it was definitely enough to easily smash human bones. For the three beast trio, Isdeth was a godlike existence. She was even bigger than the emperor of this country. Now Dustless actually let their idol do artificial respiration. How could they tolerate it? You don't know how to live. His eyelids twitched slightly, and a surge of energy broke out of his body. The irresistible repulsive force suddenly repelled him. Shinra Tensei! Bang, bang, bang. The brat who was caught off guard was immediately sent flying, rolling and crawling more than 10 meters away. Only then did he lie on the ground awkwardly. His head was close to the ground, and his buttocks were high up. It was extremely funny. Chapter 1593. Nu. Leva and Didos stared at Nu, who was embarrassed. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Their expressions were extremely exaggerated as they locked on Dustless, who was standing still. Their heads were a little dizzy. "Huh, it hurts." Didos slapped himself. The burning pain made him understand that this was not a dream. "This is... How'd he do it?" Taigu? Isdeth's watery eyes also flashed with a strong surprise. The moment just now happened too fast. Everything was just a flash of lightning. She had no extra time to react. When she realized it, Nu had already been blown away. "I can be sure now that you are not the prince." Isdeth sat elegantly on the chair and crossed her legs very lazily. "The prince that the minister told me is just an ordinary political enemy. He has no strength and is just an ordinary human. Although Nu's strength is ordinary, she can definitely beat an ordinary human, so you should not be the prince." "Is it?" Dustless heard the words and wiped the sweat stains, then patted off the dust on his body. There was a hot temperature in his body. After the wet clothes were dried, he whispered, "Since this is the case, then it is a misunderstanding. Goodbye." "Wait!" The elegant voice came again. Dustless turned his head to look. It was Isdeth who was smiling. "Anything else?" Wuchen asked. He felt a cold and gloomy aura locking onto him, as if he was being stared at by a hungry beast. The high-density evil spirit could even make people have the illusion that they were drowning in a sea of blood. However, Dustless maintained shock from start to finish and was not affected. "This guy can ignore my murderous spirit." There were ripples in the calm eyes. Isdeth's bored expression gradually became interested. "But you hit my subordinates. Don't you think you should apologize?" "Apologize? You want me to apologize?" Dustless heard the words and sneered. "I can tell you, not to mention your subordinates. Even if I hit you, do you want me to apologize? Don't even think about it." Reckless fool. Leva and Didos looked at each other angrily. They looked at each other and attacked from different directions. They were all strong people who followed Isdeth to fight. Although they were not strong enough to fight 100 people, at least 1 against 10 was absolutely no problem. "You bugs," Silver frowned slightly, and some hostility flashed through his eyes. He revealed his Scarlet 3 Tomo Sharingan. and then glanced at the two people attacking him with his deep Sharingan. Plop! The two of them were severely injured in an instant. They fell to the ground with pale faces. Wu Chen didn't even move his hands. Isteth was surprised when she saw this, and she immediately asked, Leva Didos, you two are getting more and more useless. There's no need to scold the two of them. That's because you'll end up the same way if you run into me. In fact, I don't even need to do anything. I can easily deal with you. The Scarlet 3 Tomo Sharingan stared at Isteth. Dustless said calmly, so please don't humiliate yourself. Madam Isteth. At this time, Leva's voice sounded with difficulty. He stared at Dustless's eyes with fear and said in horror, This guy is not an ordinary human being. His eyes are very strange. It seems to be something like illusion and illusion, but it's very real. Is his consciousness still awake? Staring at Leva with surprise, Dustless was quite surprised. He immediately looked at his right hand that was already bloody and nodded. This guy is very decisive. He uses pain to get rid of the illusion. He has rich fighting experience. Are you also a person with Taigo ability? Looking at Dustless's eyes, Isteth was confused. She did not remember that there was such a Taigu as eyes. The 48 Taigu of the Empire had accurate records. This ability had never been heard of. Taigu? I don't need that ability. It's superfluous for me. Dustless shook his head. Then he turned and left regardless of Isteth's idea. What kind of place is this? Dustless looked around and found that there were mountains around. There was no one. It was estimated that it was a very remote place. He could not help but curse in his mind. Why do I encounter this annoying, trifling thing every time I travel? Wu Chun smiled bitterly. He didn't have the slightest connection with that deceitful prince, and they didn't have any relationship. It was just that their appearances were somewhat similar. Whoosh! At this time, it suddenly snowed in the sunny day. The sunlight could be reflected under the sunshine. Looking carefully, a large number of ice dregs were swept up in the sky, followed by the cold wind as expected. The footsteps stopped. Dustless looked at the empty space in front of him. Even if she did not turn her head to look deliberately, she knew that his death was coming. It seemed that she did not intend to let Dustless leave. I am very curious about your ability. Stay and be my subordinate. No matter what your identity is, I can let you get glory and wealth, gold and treasures. There are only things you can't think of, but nothing you can't get. Isteth raised her voice and tempted. In this era where people's lives were as cheap as grass, it was lucky to be able to have a full meal. She believed that Dustless would give up the darkness for the light. Be your subordinate? It sounded good. Turning his head and looking at Isteth, Dustless joked, If you can send me to the position of the Emperor, I can barely be your subordinate. You're looking for death. Isteth was as cold as frost. The murderous intent that had been accumulated for a long time burst out, freezing the flowers and trees around. A layer of ice on the ground suddenly attacked Dustless, trying to turn him into a crystal ice sculpture. I may be your natural enemy. You're good at using ice, and I am good at playing with fire. Fate is really cruel. Chapter 1594. Isteth was surprised and stared at Dustless. She did not expect him to say that. She said bluntly, Although I don't know what you're talking about, but you are right. Fire can extinguish water, but the same water can also extinguish fire, and I still feel that I am better than a little kid. Phew. When the voice fell, a blue streamer came to his face. He could vaguely catch the long blue hair. There was no doubt that this person was Isteth. Isteth is really a battle maniac. Witnessing Isteth's eyes when she saw the prey, her face was as excited as if she was injected with chicken blood. It gave people the feeling that she found a suitable toy. But your name is really annoying. When it comes to age, I am qualified to be your ancestor. Because of the reason of being a Jubi, Dustless got eternal youth, as well as an immortal life. He would never be old, so his age had always been about 17 or 18 years old. Let me show you something. Katan. He had not used these ordinary ninjutsu for many years. Although Dustless's technique was also a lot rusty, When his death was about to rush, he still threw out a dragon head with a strong momentum. Great fire dragon technique. The dragon head, which was completely composed of flames, roared out and went straight to his death. This kind of trick is useless. The gem-like, gorgeous eyes flashed with admiration, and immediately his death snapped her fingers. A huge ice wall condensed in front of her, protecting his death like a shield. Bang, bang, bang. Although the fire dragon condensed by flames penetrated the ice layer, this large piece of ice was 1 meter thick, and it did not completely penetrate. It was still a few centimeters thick from his death's body. This guy's ability to play with ice is good. If I can give Akiji's ice fruit to her, Isteth's strength will inevitably be better. But unfortunately, Taigu is always a Taigu. Dustless shook his head. Although Taigu was good, its power was limited. It was not as comprehensive as the devil fruit, and the density of the ice made by Akiji was higher than that of Isteth, and the hardness was higher. Kakaka. Isteth waved her sword and smashed the ice in front of her. Then she turned into a storm, and the cold light swept towards Dustless's head. Your speed is very fast. For a human like you to be able to do this is already a miracle. Dustless nodded slightly, glanced at the incoming blade, and ignored it with a smile. He simply stood still and deliberately showed a flaw to Isteth. Humph, are you looking down on me? Isteth's delicate face became colder when she saw this, and the strength of her sword increased by 3 points. Originally, she planned to catch Dustless alive and teach this arrogant boy a good lesson. She did not expect that Dustless was not sensible enough, and now he even dared to push his luck. Pucci. The ice sword cut through Dustless's head and cut it into pieces. Why isn't it bleeding? She looked at Dustless with surprise, but what made Isteth depressed was that Dustless did not move and was not injured. She stared straight at Dustless's wound. The place that should be bloody just had a faint golden light. Then it was perfectly repaired. Dustless had nothing to do with it. You can't even hit my body. Do you understand now who is the natural enemy of whom? When the voice fell, Dustless rose into the air. The flash between his legs was diffused. The golden light covered it, and he immediately aimed at Isteth's cheek and kicked. Light speed kick. Isteth's pupils shrank, and she quickly blocked with her arms in front of her. At the same time, she gently waved her hand, and the transparent ice shield appeared again in front of her, like a wall in front of Isteth. Kakaka. However, with a crisp sound, the shield condensed by Isteth collapsed in an instant, and the huge flash was all greeted by Isteth. Boom, boom, boom. The flash did not explode, but turned into a strong impact, and all fell on Isteth's arms. Phew, 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 phew. Isteth, who had never been attacked by such a majestic force, looked pale, and she was kicked 20 or 30 meters away by Dustless like a gust of wind. This guy. Isteth's face was extremely gloomy. Her arms trembled uncontrollably. This seemingly ordinary kick almost broke her bones. I can be sure that there is no prop like Taigu, but how did this guy do it? Does a human have such a great power? Don't be kidding. Even a super dangerous species can't do this. Isteth touched her numb right arm, and after taking a closer look, she found that there was no scar left on her white wrist. If I didn't work hard to improve my strength in recent years, I am afraid that I would be killed by that kick. Thinking of this, Isteth's face was more heavy and nervous, and even had a hint of depression and vigilance, which had never appeared before. Don't worry. Looking at Isteth, who touched her wrist, Dustless waved his hand and said, I have reduced the power of the light speed kick as much as possible. The power will not hurt you. Anyway, you just saved me from the water. Although you're subordinates and you are arrogant, I am not the kind of person who likes to kill. You. Isteth's mouth twitched a few times after hearing the words, and she lowered her voice and asked hoarsely, Did you deliberately let me win? What do you think? Dustless seriously spread out his hands and asked calmly, Do you think you are my opponent? Did you just use your own strength to kick me? With your current level, that's impossible. Also, didn't I just say that I'm your natural enemy? Chapter 1595. Isteth's arms continued to tremble. She looked at Dustless with difficulty. Perhaps because of her natural belligerence, instead of flinching, the corners of her mouth were raised high, showing a charming arc. This girl deserves to be the queen of sadism. She can still smile when encountering an enemy that she can't defeat. Dustless was speechless. He stared at Isteth with some entanglement. If it was an ordinary person, he would have been thinking about how to escape. Whoosh! A row of ice dregs was shot head-on. The momentum was like a sharp blade. The number was so large that he couldn't deal with it. Especially the front end of the icicle was jumping with piercing cold light. It may even pierce through the bones. Let me enjoy the fun of fighting. Leaving such a sentence, Isteth followed the icicle and swooped down. I don't have extra time to play with you. It's more suitable to find a place to fill my stomach. Fighting. Avoid it as much as possible. Dustless looked up at the ice dregs that came head-on and moved his fingers gently. Fire release, grand fire, annihilation. The sea of fire with a diameter of tens of meters roared out. The red fire rolled toward Isteth, and the ice dregs were evaporated in the blink of an eye. This guy, Isteth's beautiful gem-like eyes widened, and her mood was a little heavy. To be honest, witnessing the overwhelming flame attack, she was shocked and speechless. No wonder he dares to say that he is my natural enemy. Isteth's white face was cautious. She immediately stepped on the ground with her feet. Her body ignored the existence of gravity for a moment and flew into the air. Clap, clap, clap. Snapping his fingers a few times in a row, several huge ice meteorites fell from the sky. Flame and ice were two diametrically opposite existences. The moment the ice meteorites appeared, the flame evaporated them, but the moderation of the ice also played a role in cooling down. The sea of fire that was originally monstrous also weakened a lot. Seize this opportunity. Isteth, who was staring at Dustless, rushed to Dustless like lightning. Seeing his careless face, as if he was dealing with a passerby, Isteth was furious. This guy really looked down on people too much. Split into two. The ice sword in her hand fell down horizontally, and the cold light went straight to Dustless's head. Isteth smiled in surprise, and her happy face seemed to find Silver's tragic death. However, in the next second, she realized that she was very wrong. Clang! Clang! The ice sword was not as sharp as expected, but it was unusually slow and ordinary. Looking closely, the cold light was directly caught by Dustless with one hand. Immediately, he exerted a little force, and Isteth's ice sword made a caw-caw sound. Isteth's self-esteem collapsed instantly like this cracking sound. Damn it! Seeing this, Isteth did not admit defeat. Instead, she waved her hand, and dense ice swords came to him. You still can't give up? Dustless shook his head. He thought that Isteth would give up after a little blow. He did not expect that the gap between her consciousness and Dustless's made her not give up, but she became braver and braver. She wanted to die together with Dustless. Sorry, I've had enough. Looking cold, Dustless's pupils turned faster, and a black flame seemed to swallow the world. Amaterasu. The black flame was like a black hole. It was born out of nothing. It swallowed all the ice cones that came to him, and even the most basic residue was not left. You want to go? At least leave something for me. Isteth was fierce, and she broke out a fierce aura. Her blue hair stood up, and the area within dozens of meters was instantly turned into ice sculptures. Isteth made up her mind and shouted, Mok Botemo. The void was frozen at this moment, and everything stopped. Everything in Isteth's eyes was petrified and could no longer move. Thank you for pleasing me for so long. Since I got the Taigu, you're the first one who forced me to use this trick. Walking to the front of Dustless, Isteth grabbed his chin, and the ice sword in her hand stabbed out. A huge bloody hole suddenly appeared in Dustless's body. It's over. Isteth wiped her sweat tiredly. After a few seconds, the time of her unique skill was also over. Looking at the body on the ground, when she was planning to bury it, she was suddenly dumbfounded. What is this situation? Looking at the wood on the ground, Isteth's tone increased several times. The body that was pierced by herself suddenly became a pierced wood. Jinja? This is Jinjutsu. Dustless's lazy tone came out from another direction, and he walked to Isteth with a chuckle. He said, "Your strength is good, but your spiritual power is not good." Jinjutsu? Isteth's face was stiff when she heard the words. She resisted the depression in her heart and asked loudly, "When did it start? Why didn't I notice it?" There is no need to answer this question. When you saw my Sharingan, it started. Dustless explained, and one of his hands had been inserted into Isteth's clothes. "Get your claws off me." Isteth noticed the big hand in her arms, and she couldn't help but be furious. She wanted to kick Dustless away, but she found that her body was as weak as if it was emptied. She had no extra strength to deal with Dustless. The big move just now had already been hit by Dustless's Jinjutsu, and it consumed all the strength of Isteth. Found it. At this time, Dustless's eyes brightened, and the big hand in Isteth's arms was also taken out. Of course, there was also Isteth's own banknotes. No matter who you are, you need enough money. Goodbye, Miss Isteth. By the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Wu Chun, not the prince you're talking about. Dustless explained while looking for the wallet, and his back gradually disappeared in Isteth's beautiful eyes. Chapter 1596. Isteth's cold eyes were dotted with hostility, and she had an unlucky expression. It was the first time for her to be robbed, and she played the role of the victim. Dustless, let's wait and see. She slammed the ground with all her strength, ignoring the weakness of her body. Isteth gathered her strength and stood up. Dustless, the strongest enemy she had ever met in her life, was right in front of her. How could she lie on the ground like a coward? But as soon as she stood up straight, Isteth helplessly found that her body seemed to be carrying a mountain. She had to bow again, and it was difficult to move. At this moment, even a worm could run faster than her. Lady Isteth. At the same time, the three beasts also woke up from their coma. They looked at each other and quietly examined Isteth, who was in a cold sweat. Their mouths squirmed slightly. Needless to say, they knew the final result. Isteth lost. Damn, is that guy so strong? He is obviously just a 17 or 18-year-old boy toy. The three beasts were secretly angry. They didn't expect Dustless to be so abnormal that he could defeat the strongest in the Empire and even the strongest in the world, the sadist General Isteth. You guys strengthen your training for me. I have a hunch that I will meet him again. Isteth ordered coldly. There was not much disappointment on her face. Instead, she was a little happy. Dustless's sudden rise made her boring life have some entertainment additives, which was a blessing in disguise. Boom, boom, boom. The violent roar resounded through the world, and a huge fire burned in the air. Are all the people in this godforsaken place dangerous? Turning his head and looking at the mountain of corpses and blood behind him, Dustless frowned. In less than half an hour, he had crushed hundreds of dangerous species. Even several super dangerous species passing by during the period were killed by him. The direction of the imperial capital should be there. Looking up at the super large city in front of him, Dustless's eyes extended to the limit, and the scene dozens of kilometers away could be seen at a glance. A sizable city appeared in Dustless's eyes. There was no doubt that it was the so-called imperial capital. About another half an hour later, Wu Chun had just arrived at this decaying city. He found that countless people were staring at him with panicked eyes. They immediately fled for fear of not being able to avoid him. What's going on? I'm not a malefic star. Also, what's with this situation? Do I need to be this unlucky? Dustless complained gloomily. Looking at the figures in front of him, he dashed forward and grabbed one of them. He grabbed the yellow-haired, yellow-faced, middle-aged man and asked, "Why did you run when you met me? Give me a reasonable explanation, or I can guarantee that you will be torn into pieces in the next second." As his voice fell, Dustless slightly released his killing intent. The man's face instantly turned pale, and he stared at Dustless in fear. He pointed at the notice board not far away, which was full of wanted posters, and said timidly, "You are wanted." "I see." Dustless heard the words and let go of the middle-aged man in his hand, and immediately walked slowly to the notice board. It was a wanted poster. After a few glances, Dustless found a young man who looked quite similar to himself. "This is the bad prince that his death said." Dustless frowned, and he felt that he was shot even though he was lying down. This person was similar to himself in appearance. "Let's find a place to eat first." Glancing at the wanted poster next to him, Dustless turned his head and left. His observation hockey spread out and soon found a suitable restaurant. However, Dustless just walked in and scared away a group of people like a jinx. What made him most speechless was that even the boss fled with him. Boom! Immediately after, Wu Chun, who was listening in all directions, realized that there was an uninvited guest. A large number of soldiers scrambled to catch him. Their ferocious appearance was extremely angry. "You are a wanted criminal, and you dare to wander under our eyes. Do you need to be so unscrupulous? You are too arrogant. Are you sure it's him?" At the same time, several obscure figures were hiding in the dark alley, staring at Dustless. These people were like dark creatures that couldn't be seen. They were all wearing black robes, as if they couldn't be exposed to the light. From the wanted poster, it should be him, but no one knows whether it is him or not. After all, no one has seen him, and all his guards are dead. Taking a closer look, these people dressed in black robes were none other than the famous assassination organization of the imperial capital, Night Raid. But does an imperial prince have anything to do with us? The young man with green hair asked, and there was a hint of rejection in his words. Although the other members didn't say much, their eyes were a little sad. "Oh, this is a long story." As the boss, Najinda, explained, this prince is actually the real heir to the emperor, but he was pulled down by the minister. Now he is still being chased. If we can get him to join our revolutionary army, it will be of great help in the future. Can you understand what I mean? Najinda continued. This prince is very important to us. If his news is exposed, we can attack the empire from public opinion, and our revolution will have more advantages. Then let's do it. I will personally bury those rotten soldiers. The black-haired, beautiful girl with a katana said calmly, and her eyes were cold. When the entire Night Raid team was about to attack, they quickly found that they were doing something unnecessary, and others didn't need help at all. Chapter 1597. Dustless stared at the soldiers who swarmed over. If possible, he didn't want to attack ordinary humans, but the premise was that they didn't provoke him. "Get out of my way." Looking around at the soldiers who surrounded him, Dustless said coldly, "You'd better get out of my way before I get angry, otherwise you." However, there were too many self-righteous people in this world. Before Dustless finished his words, this group of people rushed to shout, "Bastard! It's just a wanted person. How dare he be so arrogant? Catch this guy and beat him up. Teach him a lesson." Before Dustless finished speaking, the tide-like voices covered Dustless's voice. These idiots pointed at Dustless and scolded him. In their opinion, this guy was a dead man. How could a person who was targeted by Minister Ernest still be alive? It's hard to negotiate. The light in his hand floated. Dustless turned into a flash of light and rushed in like thunder. He was not an indecisive person. Since he gave this group of people a way to live, then they should all die. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. With a wave of his arm, light flickered. With every swing of his blade, countless people were chopped to pieces. A one-sided massacre began mercilessly. "Shoot!" Someone screamed with a sharp voice, full of fear. Damn, this guy was too scary. He looked harmless on the surface, but according to the current one-sided situation, he was simply a living killing machine. F***CK. A person could be cut into two halves with a casual slash. This was the complete opposite of the weak prince in the intelligence reports. Cough, cough, cough. At this moment, the people of the Night Raid were also shocked, especially Scarlet Pupil, who planned to take Dustless away. She was a little dizzy and looked at Najinda subconsciously. Not only Scarlet Pupil, but other members of the Night Raid also had the same look. The puzzled look was obviously saying, "Is this a person who is being hunted? Are you sure it's that prince?" Everyone, wait a minute. Najinda was embarrassed by the crowd, and at the same time, she stared at Dustless in confusion. This decisive killing and good strength were not what the prince had. No matter what, let's take him away first. Najinda broke out her aura and immediately led the members of the night raid to the place where Dustless was located. It had become hell on earth. The sharpness of the heavenly sword of gathering clouds was too terrifying, and Dustless's strength was too great, to the point that everyone was split in half. What do you guys think of this guy's skills? Najinda suddenly asked. The guy killed so many Imperial soldiers, which is equivalent to completely offending the Empire. Even if he is not the prince, he can also be a member of our night raid. Very strong. Bullet gave a thumbs up and praised. I'm sure he's better than me. He slaughtered them so cleanly and without any hesitation. He treated the old, the weak, the sick, and the disabled equally. If he wants to be an assassin, he's definitely qualified. I can feel that he's very strong, Leona chimed in. Although it's good, it's not as good as my Taigu. Mine snorted proudly. It's very clean, and his strength is also very strong. Akame nodded. She was also a master of using the sword. Dustless did not have any gorgeous swordsmanship. It was just the purest strength. That is to say, you all think he's very suitable? Najinda showed a satisfied smile. She also thought that Dustless was good, and now he still had a grudge with the Empire, which also meant that it was impossible to stand on the side of the Empire in the future. For a character like Dustless, if he joined the Empire army, he would definitely be a terrible character like Isteth in the future. Then the Revolutionary Army would have to pay a heavy price to deal with him. At the same time, Dustless also discovered the people of the night raid early. In fact, when they hid, Dustless saw the movements of several people. No murderous intent. Staring at several people who came, Dustless did not feel the cold temperament of murderous intent, and he was too lazy to entangle. When he was about to turn and leave, Najinda stopped him. The voice in her mouth stopped abruptly, and Najinda didn't know how to call him. My name is Dustless. Glancing at Najinda, Dustless replied faintly, What's the matter? I don't seem to have anything to do with your night raid, and I'm not rich. The people of a night raid looked at each other when they heard the words. Their targets seemed to be those corrupt local tyrants. So many people regarded them as robbers. Are you the Emperor of the Empire? I'm not a prince, sorry. You found the wrong person. Interrupted impatiently, Dustless was depressed. The feeling of being attacked while lying down was really not good. Inexplicably, there were a bunch of enemies. Anyone would feel depressed. Is it? Najinda was not surprised when she heard the words. The information she got said that the prince was weak, and there were even rumors that he was dead. Then, I hope you can become a member of the night raid and work together for this country. I promise you. Without waiting for Najinda to finish speaking, Dustless didn't even think about it and directly agreed. He didn't even have a place to stay now. It was a good choice to join the night raid temporarily. What's more, he had become a wanted criminal. Since this city couldn't accommodate him, then he just needed to turn the city upside down and change the dynasty. So straightforward. Not only the members of the night raid were stunned, but Najinda was also stunned. She thought that Dustless would deliberately refuse, but she didn't expect this guy to agree so easily. Chapter 1598. So straightforward. Not only were the members of the night raid in a daze, but Najinda was also stunned. She thought that Dustless would deliberately refuse, but who knew that this guy agreed so casually? The members of the night raid were full of doubts. This was too fake. He joined the night raid without any hesitation. Did their boss's charm index increase? That's not right. Even if my charm index increased, it would be me. How could it be the boss? Leonai whispered, and Najinda happened to hear it clearly. She immediately glared at her fiercely. What's your purpose? Najinda asked cautiously. Although she didn't believe that Dustless was a spy, there were some necessary situations that must be clarified. Assassins had their own rules, especially the Night Raid, which was not an ordinary assassin organization. They were a serious revolutionary army, and the identity of the members must be clear. Purpose? Hearing this, Wu Chun was stunned. He really didn't have any purpose. He subconsciously raised his head and looked at the huge palace. I don't have any great purpose or goal. However, if I have to find a purpose, it's there. Pointing at the beautiful palace, Dustless said coldly, "Inexplicably wanted me. It's unforgivable." The members of the Night Raid looked at each other in dismay. Although it was hard for them to accept Wu Chun, this weirdo, they could barely understand. Just because his appearance was close to that prince, he was wanted, and they even indiscriminately sent people to kill him. If this happened to anyone, it would be hard for them to accept. It was also understandable that he could take revenge on the Empire or the ministers. Quick, don't let those people escape. At this moment, there was a sound of hurried footsteps, and a large number of people ran at the same time. The ground shook slightly, and groups of soldiers rushed like hungry wolves. The mission is completed, everyone retreat. Najinda didn't choose to stay. After all, this was the imperial capital, the enemy's nest. No matter how they fought, they would lose in the end. The outskirts of the empire were filled with beautiful scenery. 3 days later, at the base of the Night Raid. At this moment, Najinda, as the boss, was sitting in her own position. She spat out her eyes comfortably and held a piece of paper full of information in her hand. After 3 days, the members of Night Raid had accepted Dustless as an intruder. What's done can't be undone. They had no choice but to accept the boss's orders. Furthermore, Dustless's strength was not bad. It was impossible for him to drag them down. He was also very strong. He had even given pointers to Leo, Scarlet Eye, and the others. Therefore, everyone was quite fond of Dustless. Only Lubbock wanted to cry, but had no tears. Everyone was curious about Dustless, a newcomer, so he was inevitably isolated. The target of the mission has been confirmed. It's a noble family in the imperial capital. Their methods are extremely vile. After a while, Najinda said angrily, they used sweet words to deceive others, brought passers-by to their home, and then tortured them to death. Unforgivable. Rotten to the core. All these rubbish must be removed. Living rubbish will only pollute the air. After the Revolutionary Army dominates the empire in the future, it will not be so rotten and sad. Boring. In fact, it's all the same. Dustless smiled and said nothing. In fact, there was nothing to despise. Although the empire was rotten to the core, the Revolutionary Army was probably not much better. Because greed was one of the human nature, this was uncontrollable unless all the humans in the world were completely wiped out. What's more, the Revolutionary Army was an organization. There must be internal intrigue. With the slow passage of time, decay was also a matter of time. In the end, you still become the nourishment of my infinite Tsukuyami. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly and said to himself, I remember that guy. Tatsumi seemed to take this opportunity to join the Night Raid. Anyway, I have nothing to do. It's better to go out and play this time. Is everyone going to attack? Scarlet, I asked very plainly, but there was a deep pain in her words. She held the katana in her right hand and seemed to be eager to kill the family. Najinda was slightly silent when she heard the words. She looked at Dustless. The other members were all veterans of the Night Raid. They had performed as many as dozens of missions. Of course, I have no problem. Dustless shrugged when he saw it. What a joke. No matter how strong the enemy was, even if it was a god, how could he be afraid of an ordinary human? That's the best. Najinda's eyes were cold. The evil that justice can't punish. Only we can come and kill it with a sword. The night was dark and windy. Killing and arson were everywhere. In a luxurious castle like a villa, a few black shadows like crows suddenly flashed in the sky. Everyone's eyes were filled with crimson, bloodthirsty light. Several people ignored the existence of gravity and stood quietly in the void. Only people with excellent eyesight and dynamic ability could catch the negligible thin line. This family is really evil. Looking up, staring at the abandoned warehouse in the distance, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. The air was filled with the chill of decay and desolation. Through the vision of Tensigan, Dustless could see at least hundreds of corpses. Don't leave a single one alive. As soon as Scarlet Eye's voice fell, the people of a night raid jumped from a line and launched a one-sided bloody massacre. All the living creatures that they saw were killed. After all, they were assassins. There was no distinction between men and women, old and young. All the people of this family were killed. Chapter 1599. All in all, in a word, it was enough to kill one person. If there were two, he would kill a pair. It's really boring, killing those weak people. It's just an excuse to leave it to them. As for me, in a luxurious villa, Dustless wandered around. The life of this family was quite luxurious. The castle covered a large area, and there were countless corridors and corners. Strange, where did that guy go? Dustless murmured secretly and carefully searched every room. He was looking for a person, Tatsumi. However, it seemed that there was no trace of Tatsumi, even after searching the whole villa. Did I remember it wrong? Dustless said to himself. These were the memories of hundreds of years ago in his mind. After all, he had traveled for hundreds of years. It was normal for his memory to have some deviations. On the other side, the night raid was killing this family with all their strength. There were too many people in this family, especially countless servants and professional soldiers. Obviously, they had a big background. Killing people was fast when everyone did it, but there were also some people who were lazy, such as Dustless. He had been wandering around in boredom, and he didn't kill anyone for a long time. Hey. Suddenly, there was a dissatisfied complaint behind him. Dustless was stunned. He turned his head and saw a pretty girl with a pink double ponytail. Her appearance was delicate. Her facial features were flawless. Her bright eyes were as eye-catching as the moon, and her pink skirt was quite wonderful with her young body. The girl's figure was not plump, but it was undeniable that she was a person who knew how to dress herself very well. Her short body was not disappointing. Combined with her pink skirt, it made people's eyes brighten. This girl with an extraordinary appearance was mine, the night raid's night raid. I'm performing a task, didn't you see? Dustless asked with a smile. Performing a task? Looking at Dustless suspiciously, Mine looked around and asked, "Where are the people you killed? I have been seeing you walking like an old man." "You're lazy, right?" Mine asked loudly with her chest out. Dustless was powerful, but he turned a deaf ear to the fleeing crowd around him. What was he if not being lazy? "Seriously, your breasts aren't big. What's there to stick out?" Dustless lowered his head and complained. His voice was as soft as a mosquito, but he was too close to mine, so all these words fell into her ears. "You." Mine stomped her feet angrily and immediately said with a straight face, "I'm going to report this to the boss, saying that you are slacking off in the process of performing the task." As soon as the voice fell, Mine looked at Dustless with delight. Her proud look was obviously saying, "Beg me." However, Dustless did not pay attention to her. "No, I'm not slacking off. I'm protecting you." Dustless glanced at the blurry black figure walking deeper into the forest and said calmly, "As a sniper, your close combat ability is too weak. I'll follow you and be in charge of close combat." "Protect me? Umph, what a load of nonsense." Mine hummed proudly and said loudly, "Your excuse is useless. You didn't kill anyone. I will report all to the boss. I didn't use your reward for this mission." After saying that, Mine turned and left. This is, however, at the moment when she just turned around, a black figure with flashing red eyes came quickly. It almost came to the front of Mine in an instant, and the big sword with cold light slashed toward Mine's head. All this happened in a flash, so that Mine was a little dazed. "Your sniping is good, but your close combat is SOSO. If the enemy gets close to you, the disadvantage is too big." Dustless glanced at the attacker who was barely good, and flicked a light from his finger. Laser. A straight beam of light shot out and went straight to the person. Puff! There was suddenly a light on the head, and it was killed by the light from Dustless's fingertips. The person fell down unwillingly and the big sword was a little distance away from crushing Mine. Damn it! Mine, who came back to her senses, scolded her carelessness. She just quarreled with Dustless, so she didn't notice the approaching attacker for the first time. If it weren't for Dustless, maybe her head would be separated from her body. I reluctantly recognize you, Mine said with a red face, and she was quite unwilling. Dustless stared at Mine maliciously after hearing the words. He put Mine in a checkmate and said with a smile, "It's a big problem to be absent-minded when performing the task. I will report it to the boss as it is." "You heartless guy." Mine pointed at Dustless's nose and scolded. Her hard-earned good impression of Dustless disappeared instantly. Dustless didn't say much after hearing the words. He just looked at the warehouse in the distance, quietly. There was a strange color in his eyes that was difficult to detect. He vaguely understood why he didn't meet Tatsumi. Is it possible that Tatsumi was caught and tortured by this family? Dustless looked contemplative. The character of this family was so dark and cold that they deceived all the poor people who slept on the street into their home and then tortured them severely. Phew. At the same time, all the members of the night raid completed the task and appeared one after another. There is still a dirty place that has not been solved. We can retreat after burning the warehouse full of rotten smell. Pointing to the abandoned warehouse in the distance, Scarlet Pupil took the lead to rush there. I hope that Tatsumi dies. Following the footsteps of Scarlet Pupil, Dustless prayed silently. I can smell a disgusting stench from afar. Leonette took the lead to smash the door of the abandoned warehouse. As Dustless had guessed before, a devastated wail entered the eyes of several people. "Come and save me. My name is Tatsumi." Chapter 1600. Come and save me. My name is Tatsumi. Dustless was taken aback by this sudden voice and immediately rushed to the source. A miserable young man with wounds all over his body came into view. His hair was disheveled, and his entire body was covered with whip marks. The ghastly wounds were lacerated, and his flesh was badly mangled. However, the youth's eyes were bright and full of expression. Although he was severely injured, his strong will did not collapse. This kid is very tough. Dustless sighed to himself. He could see at a glance that Tatsumi was just physically tortured, and his physique was still very majestic. Clang, 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 clang. Bullet raised his hand and cut off the chain on Tatsumi's body. He was surprised. After being tortured so severely, you can still live so tenaciously. It seems that you have received good training. Yes. Leone also nodded slightly, thinking that this handsome boy was quite pleasing to the eye. You don't even know Tatsumi. Glancing at Leone in surprise, Dustless found that Leone didn't know Tatsumi. The scene in the original work probably didn't happen because of Dustless's sudden rise. So now Tatsumi was directly tortured by this perverted family. Cough, cough, cough. At this moment, there was a violent cough in the cell, which immediately attracted Tatsumi's attention. He cried and shouted, "Ayas, how do you feel? Are you okay?" "He is incurable." Dustless came over and glanced at him and explained, "He is implanted with the virus in his body. His face is pale and weak. Although he can still hold on, he is already dying. This is just the final radiance of the setting sun. He can't hold on for long. He is being observed like a white mouse, and his internal organs are corroded." "You also know medical skills?" Scarlet Eye and others were surprised. The members of the night raid often went out to perform tasks. Sometimes injuries were inevitable, and there was no suitable doctor among them. "I just know a little bit." Dustless nodded slightly, and then said softly, "If you are sick in the future, you can ask me for help. The patient is right in front of you. How dare you call yourself a doctor when you can't treat him?" Tatsumi, who was desperate, roared. He was deeply shocked by the departure of his best friend. Back then, he had come here with a dream. Who would have thought that the imperial capital would have such a cruel start? "Don't be unreasonable." Chi Tong and the others frowned. His internal organs had already been destroyed. Only a god would be able to save him. "Let's retreat." Glancing slightly at Tatsumi, Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense with this kid. Now he was just a madman. Cough, 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 wait a minute. At this moment, Aias, who was in Tatsumi's arms, suddenly opened his mouth and begged, I hope you can take Tatsumi with you. This country seems hopeless. Everyone is a monster in human skin. This, Scarlet Eye and others frowned when they heard the words. Their task did not include this unexpected task, but it seemed inappropriate to refuse the last plea of a dead person. This guy is not bad. If we strengthen his training, he can be of great use in the future. Brant, who was kind and generous, supported Tatsumi. Although some things have deviated, what should happen will still happen. Dustless sighed in his heart. He knew that Tatsumi joining the night raid was unstoppable. Although these people were assassins, not everyone was as experienced as Dustless. In the end, their inner kindness did not abandon them. It looks good on the surface. Leone also nodded slightly, reluctantly agreeing with Brant's plan. Tatsumi was not bad. After being tortured, he was still energetic. Obviously, this piece of rotten jade was well polished. Then take him back for the time being. As for the specifics, it is up to the boss to decide. Scarlet, I finally kicked the ball to Najenda. This kind of thing was not something she could decide. It could only be handled by Najenda. Lucky boy. Dustless was too lazy to say more. Looking at Tatsumi's relaxed face, this guy may think that joining the night raid is a good thing. There will be too many opportunities to clean him up in the future. Let's retreat. In the dark night, Dustless took the lead to turn into a black shadow and integrated into the darkness. The base of the night raid was brightly lit, and everyone gathered together. Tatsumi. Najenda sat in her position belonging to the boss, staring at Tatsumi, who was obviously still a teenager, with a little doubt and hesitation in her eyes. Boss, let me deal with this guy. After a month, I promised to train a different Tatsumi. Brant stood up and guaranteed. After all, Tatsumi was pulled in by him. It was too shameful to be kicked out. This guy is also a novice. Why do you have so many restrictions on me? Is it possible that he is handsome and can be recognized? Tatsumi stood up and questioned Dustless. Tatsumi, this kid, is talking about it. Dustless had a feeling of being shot while lying down. Yes, I'm more handsome than you. If you don't believe me, you can ask everyone. Dustless raised his head proudly. His white skin was smooth like silk, and his facial features were extremely evenly distributed. He completely defeated Tatsumi, this super scum. Cough, cough, cough. If we're talking about looks, Wu Chun is more handsome than you. Brant stood up to help, and at the same time, he secretly scolded Tatsumi for being brainless. Why use your disadvantages to compare with others' advantages? Are you retarded? You... Tatsumi's face turned red when he heard the words, and he stared at Dustless indignantly. Suddenly, he felt that this face was an eyesore. It was simply a synonym for a jinx. Looking at each other can be contaminated with bad luck. Chapter 16:01. You still want to fight with me? Looking at Tatsumi contemptuously, Dustless looked down on this guy. His companion's death could only be attributed to his incompetence. If he was a little smarter, this would not have happened. Tatsumi didn't need to have a high IQ, but he didn't have the least offense, so it was understandable that he was killed. You seem to have a problem with me. Staring at Tatsumi with a smile, Dustless said bluntly, I am the same as you. Just 3 days ago, I was still unemployed. Oomph. Tatsumi snorted. It seemed that he disdained to talk to Dustless. Very arrogant. Dustless frowned when he saw this. Tatsumi gave people the feeling that he had eaten gunpowder. Why don't we have a fight? Then I think you have nothing to say. Will I be afraid of you? Come on. Tatsumi rolled his eyes and looked directly at Dustless's eyes without fear. In his cognition, Dustless had white skin, a handsome face, and a rich appearance. He looked like a noble young master, not like a professional assassin at all. Therefore, he thought that Dustless was just a facade. That's enough. Seeing the possibility of a fight, Boss Najenda had to stand up and speak. Tatsumi's words also make sense. Dustless also joined the night raid 3 days ago. You two will learn the law of being an assassin with Akame tomorrow. Let's disperse now. She waved her hand, and the crowd dispersed. Damn it, I will compete with you privately. As a newcomer, I want to see what's the difference between you. Tatsumi clenched his fist with an expression of dissatisfaction. All in all, Tatsumi didn't feel that he was worse than Dustless. Staring at the direction where Dustless disappeared, Tatsumi also chased, but he didn't take a few steps. A burly figure like a mountain blocked in front of Tatsumi. Brother? The person who suddenly appeared was Bullet. Because Bullet pulled Tatsumi into the night raid, the relationship between the two was not bad. Bullet also took care of Tatsumi. Tatsumi, go back and rest. You will learn from Akame tomorrow morning. I will train you at night, Bullet said seriously. Tomorrow. Tatsumi nodded first and immediately did not hide it. He said directly, I'm going to challenge Dustless now. That guy looks like a young master. I don't think he is special. Challenge him? Bullet's mouth twitched a few times, but Tatsumi didn't notice it. That's right. That guy is too arrogant. Also, everyone clearly doesn't recognize me. I want to use that guy to prove my strength. Tatsumi's eyes were like torches. In his heart, he regarded Dustless as a stepping stone. Idiot, don't be fooled by Dustless's appearance. He's actually very strong. Bullet said solemnly, and he was speechless. Tatsumi obviously didn't know what it meant to not judge a book by its cover. Don't be fooled by Dustless's handsome appearance. He doesn't look like a combatant. Although he looks harmless on the surface, like a knowledgeable scholar, but remember, all of this is superficial. Speaking of this, Bullet's tone was low, and his eyes were vaguely filled with respect. Is he stronger than brother? I heard that Big Sister Leonie said that you were known as the 100 Killer. Tatsumi's face was full of admiration. No matter which world, people respected the strong. Idiot. Bullet smiled bitterly and explained, 3 days ago, when we went to meet Dustless to join the night raid, he killed hundreds of elite soldiers in just a few minutes. Leonie didn't tell you this. She didn't tell you this because she didn't want to break your confidence. Killed hundreds of elite soldiers in a few minutes? Tatsumi showed a shocked expression, opened his mouth, and finally stared at Bullet's helpless cheeks and closed his mouth sullenly. He was choked by Bullet's words. In the dense jungle, 3 figures stood side by side. What does catching fish have to do with being a killer? It's digression. Tatsumi asked speechlessly, always feeling that he was used as a cook. This can't be helped. In a night raid, I am responsible for everyone's favorite food. Scarlet Pupil said as she walked, holding the roasted calf of dangerous species in her hand. Is this guy really as strong as brother said? With a sigh, Tatsumi secretly looked at Dustless, who had nothing to do, and his brows frowned. It's best to find a chance to test him. Tatsumi thought so. Soon, the 3 came to a vast pool. The water was very clear and very cool, and they could clearly see the swimming fish in the depths of the water droplets. You two can start. Pointing to the pool below, Scarlet Pupil continued to gnaw the meat in her hand and explained, today's lunch is to eat fish. The person who catches less has no food. No food. Splash. Tatsumi was stunned when he heard the words, and he jumped directly into the water without taking off his clothes. It's really boring. On the other hand, Wu-chan was just sitting lazily at the edge of the pond, teasing the little fishes that swam by comfortably as if he had nothing to do with it. He had a look of indifference. If you sit like this, there will be no food for lunch. Scarlet Pupil kindly reminded him. Anyway, I have lived for hundreds of years. Let Tatsumi eat. Dustless had a magnanimous expression on his face. Although he said so, he smiled slyly in his heart. There seems to be a dangerous species under the water, an unexpected surprise. Staring at the super big fish full of fangs in the water droplets, Dustless smiled even more. Chapter 1602. Deep at the bottom of the lake, Tatsumi swam around vigorously, trying to catch these big fish, but he was obviously too inexperienced. This kind of fish was not an ordinary fish on the market. It was very vigilant. Tatsumi did not catch one, but attracted the attention of a dangerous big fish with fangs. While he stared at other fish, he did not know that others had become others' dinner. Gulp! Looking at the right time, this super dangerous big fish took advantage of the situation. His big mouth with fangs that could bite steel went straight to Tatsumi. Tatsumi, leave quickly, you are being watched. Not everyone was as evil as Dustless. Scarlet Pupil just caught the dangerous species and stood up to remind Tatsumi. Tatsumi was shocked when he heard the words. He quickly turned his head and saw a dangerous species rushing toward him. Plop! At the critical moment, Tatsumi struggled to move his body and barely escaped from the tiger's mouth. This stupid fish. Dustless scolded angrily when he saw the situation. His eyes flashed with a cunning look. He thought in his heart, if you can't do it, let me help you. His pupils rippled with a considerable amount of eye power. The dangerous fish at the bottom of the water was suddenly controlled by Dustless. Tonight's dinner will be yours. After escaping a blow, Tatsumi's confidence soared. He decisively took out the steel sword tied to his back. Idiot, come up quickly. This dangerous species at the bottom of the water has an absolute advantage. Scarlet Pupil nervously reminded. Cough. Scarlet Pupil, there's no need to worry. Let this kid suffer. When he is in danger, we will teach him a lesson. Dustless took Scarlet Pupil's soft arm and smiled maliciously. Scarlet Pupil had taken off her top and bottom, revealing her smooth and delicate skin. Her figure was delicate, and her cleavage was unexpectedly high at a young age. Dustless did not expect Scarlet Pupil to suddenly take off her clothes, and he was a little stunned for a while. What are you looking at? Chitong's clear eyes were filled with doubt. She subconsciously looked down at her body, thinking that she had been stained with something dirty. When she met Dustless's gaze, she couldn't help but blush. Cough, cough, cough. Hurry up and put on your clothes. Leave the task of saving Tatsumi to me. Dustless patted his chest and promised. It was just a dangerous species. At the same time, the war at the bottom of the sea came to an end. Plop! The dangerous species controlled by Dustless, with a super tail swing, hit Tatsumi and made him vomit blood. Even because the force was too strong, it directly threw Tatsumi to the shore and heavily hit the ground. TSK, TSK, TSK. Tatsumi is really embarrassed. Chitong and Dustless walked to the front of Tatsumi and looked at the bruised Tatsumi. Dustless was fine, but Chitong could not tolerate it. This is all because of your arrogance. If this was a one-off mission, you might have caused the entire team to be wiped out. Chitong's tone was extremely serious, completely different from her usual naive self. Tatsumi's mouth squirmed when he heard the words, and he lowered his head in shame. Sorry, I was impulsive. TSK, he said. Dustless smacked his lips in an extremely harsh manner, silently mocking Tatsumi. Tatsumi raised his eyes and looked at Dustless. His contemptuous eyes seemed to say, why are you so useless? You can't even deal with a fish. Catch it if you have the guts, Tatsumi said indignantly. Otherwise, please shut your mouth. You will be hungry with me at noon. Dustless did not catch any fish now. Dustless. Chitong's gaze also swept to Dustless, looking forward to his method. Catch it? It's very simple. Unexpectedly, Dustless suddenly sat on the ground and stared at the dangerous big fish in the water with clear eyes. He explained, this is a dangerous species called swordbone fish. It is quite dangerous. It is as terrible as its name. Its bones can be used to make swords. At the same time, its defense is very strong. Let alone in the water, even on land, it is difficult to hurt it. After all, you can't do it. Tatsumi's shattered confidence finally recovered a little. No, it's actually very simple to catch them. Dustless showed a meaningful smile and said faintly, this kind of super dangerous species is very strange. Due to its strong strength, the food that it replenishes is not proportional to its consumption, so it has a period of dormancy to recover its physical strength. It's almost time. Why do you know so clearly and so knowledgeable? Tatsumi and Chitong were both stunned and quite surprised. Guru! Just at this moment, An extremely human-like voice suddenly sounded. Looking over, it was indeed as Wu Chun had said. This dangerous species of big fish was actually snoring on the surface of the lake. Good opportunity. Tatsumi's eyes lit up. He wanted to catch the dangerous species, but the tingling all over his body made him unable to move. On the contrary, Dustless looked at him with a smile and said, "You can train if you are not strong enough, but it's your fault if you are uneducated. Eat less snacks and read more books in the future." Damn bastard. Looking at Dustless who left, Tatsumi looked unlucky. He seemed to have become a negative example. Dustless is right. You have to know how to apply what you have learned. He has read a lot of books these days. His learning ability is very strong. Chi-Tong looked at Dustless admiringly. The biggest difference between a smart person and a fool was that he would apply everything he had learned to reality. 10,000 Mammoth Heaven. A strong gravitational force was emitted from his hand, and the sleeping dangerous species was suddenly caught by Dustless. "Let's go back." Dustless stretched his body and said lazily. The dangerous big fish was floating in the sky. It was particularly shocking in the eyes of Tatsumi and Chi-Tong. Chapter 1603. At noon, it was time for lunch at the base of the night raid. Many members of the night raid were eating around the table. Dustless was naturally among them, but Tatsumi was miserable. He stood aside with bandages all over his body and watched the people eating, drooling. But no one cared about him. Who let him fail his mission? In the end, it was Dustless who benefited. Najinda, who heard about the incident, not only did not sympathize with Tatsumi, but she secretly scolded that he was hopeless. In the water, fighting with dangerous fish species, wasn't this a stupid behavior? For a time, Tatsumi became the villain boss and became the focus of everyone's attack. Dustless smiled and said nothing. He was attacking Tatsumi comfortably while watching the show. Bullet also had a headache. After all, he promised to train Tatsumi in a month. Now it seemed that there was some pressure. If I can't defeat Tatsumi in a month, my reputation will be ruined. Looking up at the ceiling, Bullet suddenly regretted. He was obviously digging a hole to bury himself. Not good. At this moment, Lubbock suddenly exclaimed and said in a deep voice, "Our base was invaded." The target of the sneak attack was still 1 or 2 people, but there were as many as 7 or 8 people. Good job. Najinda blew a smoke ring and ordered in a cold voice, "It's probably those aliens. They dare to go deep alone, which is worthy of praise, but they chose the wrong opponent." Due to the urgency of the situation, the night raid, all members are dispatched. As the boss, Najinda's voice just fell. All the members of the night raid were dispatched urgently. Everyone was obviously experienced and jumped out of the window. Only Dustless continued to eat as if nothing had happened. This time, all members are dispatched. Looking at Dustless, who was standing still, Najinda repeated again, "For an assassin, if you are too lazy, your body will rust." No. Dustless just shook his finger and said, "Boss, the more shrewd the eagle is, it usually hides its sharp claws. When it is critical, it will show its ferocious side. So this kind of small thing can be done by them." That's true. Thinking of Dustless's record in the capital, Najinda also felt that she was overqualified. Although Dustless was a newcomer, his strength was definitely second to none in the night raid. Just now, the boss was talking to Leona about something. It should be about another quest. Dustless asked calmly, "I heard that recently there's a guard captain named Oka. That guy has done a lot of bad things. The mission we received this time should be related to him." "How did you guess?" Najinda looked horrified. "That's simple." Dustless smiled calmly. "First of all, the corrupt officials of the Empire have always been the first target of the night raid. Secondly, that Appa has done a lot of bad things and has countless enemies. I heard that the night raid had accepted the mission to assassinate Oka before, but the mission ended in failure. It's right to invite you to join night raid." Najinda showed a satisfied smile and then sighed. "To be honest, Esteth has solved the war with a few races at the border in advance. Now she is on her way to the capital. She may return to the capital in a day or two. So the boss is going to kill some scum in advance? Dustless asked and affirmed, I'm afraid that Esteth will rush back when she heard that I was in the capital. After all, Dustless bullied her once. It was normal for this woman with a strong desire for battle to want to retaliate. Yes, so these days, we should try to eradicate those scum who have no conscience. Naginda's eyes were like torches, shining with bright colors. Let me deal with it. Looking at the blue void through the window, Dustless took the initiative to volunteer. He had no good feelings for this deceitful empire. They inexplicably wanted to arrest him. Dustless naturally wanted to retaliate. Of course, there's no problem. There's also an oil merchant who colluded with Oka. This time, we will also kill him. As for the specific candidates to carry out this mission, it will be Akame and Leone, plus you and Tatsumi. Leone is familiar with the capital. We're to ambush Oka and the oil merchant. You guys decide by yourselves. Taking a deep breath, Naginda finally ordered. Her original intention was to let Dustless train Tatsumi. Tatsumi, who had not been baptized by the battlefield, was always a greenhouse flower. He, of course, no problem. Wu Chen's smile became more and more terrifying. It made people's hair stand on end. He didn't have a good impression of Tatsumi. He even hated this guy. He didn't like him. It would be best if he had a chance to get rid of him. On the other side, Tatsumi was trembling, and an indescribable chill spread all over his body. Why do I feel like I am being stared at by the devil? Tatsumi, who was carrying out the mission with Bullet and others, muttered to himself. His body was trembling uncontrollably. Pucci, Pucci, Pucci. In less than 10 minutes, the invaders were all slaughtered by the night raid. They were just ordinary soldiers, and although the members of the night raid were few in number, they could be said to be strong enough to fight against 100. Dealing with these shrimp soldiers and crab generals was naturally a piece of cake. There was not the slightest problem. After half an hour, everyone came back safe and sound. After the arrangement of Boss Naginda, Dustless, Tatsumi, Akame, and Leone gathered together to discuss some necessary plans. Then they decided to sneak into the capital at night to kill Oka and the oil merchant. Chapter 1604. A bleak night, a bleak wind, a bleak imperial capital, and a few bleak silhouettes. This combination was the most suitable. The decaying empire and the corrupt garbage needed them to clean up. You two go assassinate the oil merchant. As for Oka, leave it to me and Tatsumi. Dustless promised and pulled Tatsumi with a smile. It's just a captain of the guards. We will definitely solve him. Right, Tatsumi? Right? Right your ass. Tatsumi nodded on the surface, but he secretly slandered in his heart. After all, it was his first mission. It was normal to be nervous. After all, Tatsumi was just a newcomer. Especially, he teamed up with Dustless, his enemy. This guy is more dangerous and terrible than the captain of the guards. Tatsumi was full of vigilance. If he could, he really didn't want to be with such a dangerous person like Dustless. No! At this moment, Scarlet Pupil suddenly looked determined. She looked at Dustless and Tatsumi and said in a deep voice, that Oka is too dangerous. He is the captain of the Imperial Capital's guards. It is safer for the four of us to go together. You go? How can I cheat Tatsumi if you go? Dustless complained helplessly in his heart. He was helpless to Scarlet Pupil's insistence. After all, she belonged to the captain level. Then let's go. Dustless could only compromise. Then the four of them disappeared under the night sky. It was not impossible to cheat Tatsumi in another way. Anyway, this guy was stupid. He knew that he was easy to cheat just by looking at his face. It is really the most comfortable to drink after the interrogation. On the street, a ferocious-looking man shouted. His appearance was terrible and very gloomy. His face was dark, and his eyes sometimes jumped with raging light. At first glance, he was not a good person. That Master Oka, At this moment, a worried and scared voice suddenly sounded behind him. "Who are you?" Oka was stunned and turned his head to look. It was a boy in a robe. Oh no, it was a girl. This person's appearance was extremely strange. "Damn dustless, if you fail, I'll skin you alive." Tatsumi, who was disguised as a young girl, roared fiercely in his heart. Because of Dustless's bad idea, he had to pretend to be a beautiful young girl. What made Tatsumi break down the most was that Leonai and Scarlet Pupil agreed without distinguishing right from wrong. A beautiful girl, no matter who it is, will relax their vigilance around you. Dustless explained to Tatsumi before leaving. But even so, Tatsumi, who was disguised as a young girl, was not bad, and he was barely acceptable. But some people were born to belong to the strange type, such as Oka. He stared at Tatsumi for a moment, and then his face flashed with anger and killing intent. "Get away from me, you damn transvestite. Ugly bastard. I, Lord Oka, have a normal sexual orientation. Do you think I can't recognize a little brat who pretends to be a beauty? Die." Oka shouted angrily. He found that his IQ was underestimated. Then he waved his fist in anger and smashed it at Tatsumi unceremoniously. All of this happened in a flash. Oka hit Tatsumi's cheek with his strength, and Tatsumi was still immersed in the 3 words that Oka insulted him. "Ugly bastard. How hurtful it is to my self-esteem." Boom, boom, boom. Tatsumi was smashed 5 or 6 meters away. His head was bleeding, and he almost fainted on the spot. Cough, 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 this is an accident. Witnessing Tatsumi's disguise being seen through and being beaten by Oka, Dustless was stunned and quickly distanced himself from it. At the same time, he said in a blaming tone, "Tatsumi is too immature after all. His acting skills are too bad. If it was me, I can definitely deceive Oka to other allies to kill him." "You bastard." Akame and Leone were speechless when they heard the words. "You are obviously deliberately deceiving others." Oka was not an idiot. Although Tatsumi looked like a girl after disguising, Oka, who was a veteran in dealing with women, could see the clues of Tatsumi at a glance. Poor Tatsumi was deceived by Dustless. "Say, who sent you to approach me? Especially with such an ugly disguise. Who do you think I am? Could it be that you think that I would be fooled by a few broken branches and withered willows? Can't you figure out the direction?" Oka pulled out his sword and asked. The cold light reflected by the broad blade shone on Tatsumi's face. What a terrifying, murderous aura. Tatsumi was full of fear. Fear flowed in his eyes. Looking at Oka, who was approaching, his body retreated uncontrollably. Cold sweat fell like rain. "You are too timid. You are useless." Dustless and others who were watching in the dark shook their heads. Although they were exposed because they were not prepared, Tatsumi's performance today was really unflattering. Instead of saying that he was an assassin, he looked more like a guilty conscience. "I guess you are the member who specializes in assassinating dignitaries. Night raid? Very good, very good. I need your head to give me a promotion." Oka showed a devilish smile and immediately walked toward Tatsumi, who was scared out of his wits. "Retreat." Tatsumi suddenly remembered the instructions of Dustless and others in his mind. He quickly rushed to a place with few people. After all, it was still on the street. He ran to the dark alley without stopping. Oka, who followed, regarded Tatsumi as a prey in his heart. Perhaps he thought that the other members of the night raid were the same as Tatsumi, ordinary people. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.